Okay, then, I'm going on this trip with my mom. You stay home, alright? What? I was stunned. But this is my prize from the contest, and if the winner doesn't use the ticket, it'll just expire. I wanted to say that, but my husband, Liam, said something so shocking it left me speechless. If you don't like it, then we'll get a divorce. Excuse me? I'm saying that if you can't agree with me, then we'll end this marriage. At that moment, all the love I felt for Liam disappeared. My name is Emma, and I'm 30 years old. I work in an office. Growing up, I attended all-girls schools from middle school to college, so I barely talked to any boys. I was so busy with work that I never had time for dating. Suddenly, I realized I was 25 and had never been in love. A friend of mine noticed and set me up on a blind date. That's when I met my first boyfriend. He told me he was an office worker, but it turned out he was a freelancer, and soon became unemployed after we started dating. I realized he wanted to rely on me financially, so I broke up with him quickly. After that, I became even more cautious around men and avoided relationships. By the time I turned 30, I still hadn't dated anyone else. My parents were very worried. They had been married for years by the time they were my age, so they were anxious about my future. These days, people don't think getting married in your 30s is too late, but back then, many thought the ideal age was around 25, so my dad started bringing me suggestions for arranged marriages. At first, I kept rejecting them, but I could see how much my parents cared and wanted me to be happy. I decided to give it a try. That's when I met Liam, the man who would become my husband. Liam, the same age as me, had also gone to all-boys schools and had little experience with relationships. What I liked about him was how much he cared for his parents. He treated them with so much kindness and respect. Even as an adult, Liam often visited his parents, took them on trips, and spent a lot of time with them. He seemed like a kind and thoughtful person, and he worked at a good company. After what happened with my first boyfriend, I made sure to double-check his credentials by verifying his business card. Liam didn't raise any red flags, and I thought, he seems trustworthy. We continued dating, and Liam always took the lead since I was a little shy. He treated me with so much care, and over time, I found myself falling for him more and more. After 2 years together, Liam proposed, and we got married. My parents were overjoyed. They even cried when I told them. I felt so lucky to have found a good husband and to have made my parents happy too. After the wedding, we went on our honeymoon and started our life as a married couple. Since we both had jobs, we split the chores. I handled the cooking because Liam wasn't great in the kitchen, and he took care of cleaning and laundry. Life felt balanced and happy, and we supported each other. But everything changed after just 1 year of marriage. It started when Liam's father passed away after a long illness. After that, Liam began to spend almost all his free time with his mom, Clara, who now lived alone. On his days off, he would go to her house, take her out for errands, or even go on trips with her. Sometimes, he would stop by her house after work and have dinner with her. One morning, I saw him leaving the house with a travel bag. Surprised, I asked, "Are you going on a business trip?" He replied casually, "No, I'm going on a trip to New York with my mom." I was stunned. First, I couldn't believe he planned a trip without telling me. Second, he only mentioned it because I asked. He was going to keep it a secret. I didn't mind that he cared for his mom, but I felt disrespected as his wife. His behavior seemed extreme. He wasn't just being a caring son, he was acting like a mama's boy. When I brought it up, Liam didn't see anything wrong with what he was doing. He wasn't willing to change, either. I decided to tolerate it for a while. I thought to myself, if we divorce after just 1 year of marriage, it'll break my parents' hearts. Maybe things will get better if we have a child. Divorce felt like a big step, so I convinced myself to hold on. To take my mind off things, I started entering contests as a hobby. Surprisingly, I enjoyed it. Winning prizes and writing reviews became a fun escape, and I kept myself busy with it. I often won small prizes, like cosmetics and food. But one day, something amazing happened. I won a pair of airline tickets to Guam. I couldn't believe it. I read the email 3 times, thinking there must be some mistake, but after checking it thoroughly, I realized it wasn't a scam. There were no suspicious links or requests for personal information. It was real. I had won a trip to Guam. The email said I needed to contact the airline to redeem the tickets. The big question was, who should I go with? Liam had just gone to New York with his mom, Clara. Should I ask my friends or my parents instead? Then it hit me, why not let my parents enjoy the trip? They hadn't traveled abroad in years. I went to their house and shared the good news. Well, it's been such a long time since we've had a trip like that, my mom said. Are you sure, Emma? You won this prize. It's fine, let me do this for you guys, you deserve it. Well, thank you, that's so kind of you. Seeing them so happy warmed my heart. But then my dad noticed something on the ticket. Wait a second. What's wrong, Dad? This ticket is only valid for the person who won it. It's non-transferable, and you can't sell it either, he read. What? So I can't give it to you both as a gift? Looks like it. Oh, man. Well, there was no way around it. Honey, why don't you just go with Liam? My mom suggested. Since they encouraged me, I decided to ask Liam to join me on the trip. Later that evening, when I got home, I noticed something by the door, a woman's coat. It was a coat I recognized, Clara's. I walked into the living room and saw her sitting on the couch, watching TV. Oh, Emma, you're finally back. What were you doing out so late on your day off? She asked. Oh, I didn't know you were visiting, Clara. What do you mean? Is it a problem for me to come to my son's house? No, of course not. Clara used to be kinder to me when Liam's dad was alive, but after his passing, she became distant and sometimes outright cold. What's in the bag? She asked, noticing the bag I was carrying. Inside was a guidebook I had bought for the trip to Guam. Oh, it's nothing. Let me see it. Huh? Why? Just give it here. Before I could respond, Clara grabbed the bag from my hand. Huh? Guam? Are you trying to treat yourself? What are you doing with Liam's money? What was she talking about? I've never depended on Liam for money like this. I won the tickets in a contest, and I thought I'd go on the trip with my husband. Oh, really? You won them, huh? Suddenly, Clara's tone changed, and she got all excited. I had a bad feeling about this. Just then, Liam walked into the living room, apparently coming back from his bath. Oh, Emma, you're back. What's going on? I could hear my mom's happy voice all the way from the bathroom. Liam, listen, Emma won a trip to Guam in a contest. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, so I thought I'd go with you, Liam. I even bought a guidebook for the trip. How many people can go? Liam asked. It's a pair of tickets, so just the two of us. Liam went quiet for a moment and looked at Clara. She was staring at him, giving him that fake, sweet smile, like a puppy hoping for a treat. Well then, I'm going on the trip with my mom. You stay home, Liam said. Huh? I was completely shocked. I couldn't believe Liam was acting like this. This is my prize from the contest. I protested. So what? We're a couple. What's yours is mine, right? And what's mine is my mom's, he replied. What kind of logic was that? No way. Besides, you and Clara just went on a trip a few weeks ago. That doesn't matter. Liam paid for that one. And it was just a domestic trip. I haven't been on an overseas trip in years. Clara chimed in. She was already planning on going. Hey, I never agreed to you both going on this trip. Besides, I started to explain that the tickets would be invalid without the winner there, but Liam interrupted me. If you don't like it, then we'll get a divorce. Excuse me? I said, if you can't listen to what I say, then we'll get a divorce. I couldn't believe he said that. As soon as the words left his mouth, all the love I had for him vanished. Fine. Do whatever you want, I said, feeling numb. See? Why didn't you just say so earlier? You're so selfish, Liam snapped. Both Liam and Clara looked so pleased, as if they had won some big victory. Then, while flipping through the guidebook they had taken from me, they happily began planning their trip. I started thinking about what to do after the divorce. Later, Liam asked me to confirm the details with the airline, so I did. But it was just a formality. I'm sorry, but you cannot give the tickets to anyone else, even family or relatives, the airline representative explained. That makes sense, I replied. Then I said, I would like to decline the tickets I won in the contest, and ended the call. I told Liam I called, and here are the terms and conditions of the tickets. Please check them. He just scoffed, saying, I don't need to read the terms, and left the tickets on a shelf. He probably never realized the tickets were invalid. I shared everything with my parents. I told them I wanted to make the day of Liam and Clara's trip the day I would leave for good. After hearing what happened, my dad was shocked. "I never thought Liam could be like this," he said. Dad had been the one to suggest Liam as a potential match for me, so he was especially hurt. "It's not your fault, Dad. He only started showing his true self recently," I reassured him, trying to calm him down. On the day of the trip, Liam was in a great mood as he got ready to leave. I was curious to see how he and Clara would react at the airport. "Well, I'm off. Take care of the house while I'm gone," Liam said, grinning. "Yeah, have fun." Liam seemed surprised by my cheerful goodbye. As soon as Liam left, my parents arrived at the house. They helped me move my things into the car, and we headed to my new apartment. I had been looking for a new place the moment I couldn't stand Liam anymore. I found a cozy apartment near my office and decided to move in right away. After settling in, I felt comfortable and relieved. About 2 hours later, Liam called. "Hello? Oh, hey, what's up?" "They said our tickets are invalid." "Yep, that's right. If the winner doesn't go, the tickets are invalid." "What? I didn't hear anything about that. I told you to check the terms and conditions. It's all written there." "I never read that stuff." "Well, then that's your fault for not checking. It's like someone who gets sued and says they didn't know the law." "What do I do now?" "I already booked a hotel in Guam. They told me you'd have to pay for your own tickets. I'm not dealing with this anymore. You and Clara can figure it out." I hung up. 10 minutes later, Liam called again. "What's up now? Why can't I pay with your card, huh?" "What do you mean?" "The card you use as a backup." Panicked, I checked my drawers and realized my backup card was missing. "You took the card without asking." "I just borrowed it for a bit, but the airline told me I can't use it without permission." "What's going on? Are you stupid? You can't use a card if you're not the owner." "Wait, the internet said I could." "Internet? Oh no." And with that, he hung up. No way. I immediately checked my credit card statement and saw a list of unfamiliar charges I didn't remember making. I soon remembered that Liam had been buying a lot of clothes and other things recently. He must have used my card to make those purchases without asking. I immediately canceled the card and took a screenshot of the statement to keep a record. I would make him pay for this later. A few days later, I received a call from Liam after his 3-day trip to Guam. "Hey, what's going on? I came home to find none of your things left and the divorce papers on the table." "What's happening?" "Well, it's simple. I can't live with someone who prioritizes his mother over his wife, and someone who uses my credit card without permission." "What? If you won't sign the divorce papers, we can go to court." "Court? Are you in trouble? If people at work find out, I'll have my lawyer handle it. You better agree to the divorce quietly." "No way." Liam reluctantly accepted the divorce on the condition that there would be no division of property, and that he would pay me for the unauthorized credit card charges. But my revenge didn't stop there. I didn't mention the details, but I knew my dad, who had arranged this marriage, wouldn't let it slide. As expected, Liam called again. "This isn't what we agreed on. Everyone at work knows now, and they're calling me a mama's boy and a thief. I can't walk into work anymore without feeling embarrassed." "Oh, what a pity," I replied with indifference. I didn't go into details. "Did you forget how many people were involved in our marriage?" "Oh." Our marriage had been arranged through a connection between my dad, a general manager, and Liam's boss, a department head in his company. Liam's boss was furious when he heard the news and, as a result, Liam was removed from the courier track. Now, he's looked down upon by his colleagues. As for Clara, the news spread to her neighbors, who began avoiding her. She now stays shut inside her house. I didn't feel sorry for either of them, they got exactly what they deserved. As for me, I focused on my career, got promoted, and received a salary raise. To celebrate, I took my parents on a long-awaited overseas trip to Italy, where we created wonderful memories together. It had been a tough experience, but it helped me realize what I truly want in a relationship. I'll be more careful next time and look for someone who truly values me. I was shocked that Liam turned out to be both a mama's boy and a thief. When it comes to that, there's no fixing him. I'm glad that Sasha's family is doing well and that they finally got to enjoy their dream vacation in Italy. I truly hope that Sasha, who is kind and family-oriented, finds someone deserving of her. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.
The bottle rolled across our parents' hardwood floor, its prescription label catching the dining room light. My sister Eva lunged for it with unusual speed for someone supposedly battling stage 3 lymphoma, her perfectly manicured nails scraping against the wood as she snatched it up. I'm Freya, and that was the moment I should have known something wasn't right. "Just my vitamins," Eva laughed, tucking the bottle into her designer handbag. Her voice carried that familiar, sweet tone that always seemed to hypnotize our family. "You know how forgetful I can be with these things." Mom rushed over, placing her hand on Eva's shoulder. "Sweetheart, you need to be more careful with your medications, especially now." Her voice cracked on the last word. We were gathered for our weekly family dinner, but tonight was different. Eva had called earlier, insisting everyone needed to be present for an important announcement. Now here we sat, our plates of Mom's lasagna growing cold while Eva dabbed at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "I don't know how to say this," Eva began, her lower lip trembling. "I've been keeping something from all of you for the past few weeks." Dad reached across the table, taking her hand. "Whatever it is, Princess, we're here for you." I watched as Eva's eyes welled up with tears. She'd always been the family darling, our father's precious princess, while I was the reliable older sister who could handle herself. 28 years of playing second fiddle had taught me to read Eva's performances like a well-worn script. "The doctors found something," she whispered. "It's lymphoma, stage 3. Mom's wine glass slipped from her hand, shattering against the table. Red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like blood. Dad's face went ash-gray. "Oh, God, no," Mom sobbed, pulling Eva into her arms. "Not my baby." I sat there, frozen, as the scene unfolded. Eva detailed her supposed diagnosis, her voice breaking at all the right moments. She mentioned treatments she couldn't afford, specialist appointments that were stretching her finances thin. "I didn't want to worry anyone," she sniffled, "but I can't do this alone anymore." "You won't have to," Dad declared, his voice firm despite his trembling hands. "We'll remortgage the house if we have to, whatever you need." I found my voice at last. "Which hospital are you being treated at?" Eva's eyes met mine just for a second. Something flickered there, something that made my stomach twist. "Memorial," she replied smoothly. "Dr. Harrison's my oncologist. He's been amazing." My best friend Paris worked at Memorial. I'd never heard of a Dr. Harrison in oncology. "We should all go with you to your next appointment," I suggested, keeping my tone gentle. "For support." Eva's smile tightened slightly. "Oh, I wouldn't want to overwhelm everyone. Besides, the treatments, they're not pretty. I wouldn't want you to see me like that." "Freya," Mom cut in sharply, "stop interrogating your sister. Can't you see she's been through enough?" I fell silent, watching as my parents fussed over Eva. They were already discussing financial arrangements, talking about liquidating their retirement accounts. Eva sat there, accepting their devotion with practiced grace, occasionally wiping away a perfectly timed tear. My phone buzzed, a text from Paris. "Drinks tomorrow? Need to talk about something important." "Of course we'll help," Mom was saying as I looked up from my phone. "We're family. We'll face this together." Eva turned to me, her eyes wide and pleading. "I know we haven't always been close, Freya, but I really need my big sister right now." The words hit their mark. Despite my doubts, despite the nagging feeling in my gut, guilt washed over me. What kind of person suspects their sister of lying about cancer? "I'm here for you," I heard myself say. "Whatever you need." Eva reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her grip was strong, her palm dry and warm, not at all like someone fighting for their life. Later that night, as I helped Mom clean up, I noticed Eva's vitamin bottle had fallen out of her bag again. This time, I managed to catch a glimpse of the label before she snatched it away. It was empty. Completely empty. And the label was partially torn off, showing only a fragment of text that didn't look anything like a prescription. "Everything okay?" Eva asked, her voice honey-sweet but her eyes sharp as daggers. Yeah, I lied, forcing a smile. Everything's fine. But as I drove home that night, Eva's empty pill bottle and Dr. Harrison from Memorial kept circling in my mind. Something wasn't adding up, and I had a sinking feeling I knew exactly what tomorrow's conversation with Paris would be about. There's no Dr. Harrison in our oncology department, Paris said, sliding my coffee across the table. Never has been. The morning sun streamed through the cafe windows, but I felt cold. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram, showing Paris my sister's latest post. Eva at some high-end boutique, modeling a new Gucci bag. Posted 3 hours ago, I said. Shouldn't she be at chemo? Paris leaned forward, her nurse's instincts kicking in. Look, I didn't want to say anything without being sure, but something's definitely wrong here. Cancer patients on aggressive treatment for stage 3 lymphoma don't usually go on shopping sprees. Maybe she's just trying to stay positive. Even as I said it, I knew how desperate I sounded. Freya? Paris's voice was gentle but firm. Yesterday, you told me she claimed to be getting treatment at Memorial. I checked the records. We have no patient by her name. My coffee turned bitter in my mouth. That's impossible. She must be registered under... My phone buzzed. A message from Sophie, a mutual friend from college. Hey, weird question. Is Eva really sick? Just saw her at the mall looking pretty healthy for someone doing chemo. I showed Paris the message. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Your parents are talking about remortgaging their house, she reminded me. If there's even a chance she's lying... I know. I pulled my hand away, running it through my hair. God, I know. But how do I even begin to prove it? Start with the basics. What medications did she say she's taking? I shook my head. She gets weird whenever anyone asks specific questions. Changes the subject or says she doesn't want to burden us with details. Red flag number 1. Paris counted off on her fingers. No doctor at Memorial. Red flag 2. Shopping sprees during supposed treatment times. Red flag 3. And let's not forget that mysterious empty pill bottle. My phone lit up again, this time with a family group text from Eva. Feeling blessed to have such amazing support through this journey. Mom and Dad, the first treatment payment went through. Thank you so much. How much are they giving her? Paris asked. $5,000 for the first round. My voice cracked. They took it from their retirement fund. Okay, that's it. Paris pulled out her own phone. I'm calling in a favor. My friend Amy's an oncologist at St. Luke's. Let me run this by her, no names mentioned. While Paris stepped outside to make the call, I scrolled through Eva's social media. Between the brave fighter posts and sympathy-gathering status updates, there were shopping hauls, spa days, and restaurant check-ins. No hospital visits, no treatment updates, nothing medical at all. Paris returned, her face grim. Amy says the timeline doesn't add up. Stage 3 lymphoma patients don't typically maintain such an active social schedule, especially in the first rounds of treatment. The fatigue alone. I need to tell my parents, I interrupted. Wait. Paris grabbed my arm. You need proof first. Real, solid proof. You know how your family is with Eva. If you go in there with just suspicions, they'll never believe you. She was right. I'd spent my whole life being the jealous older sister in their eyes. Every time I'd called out Eva's manipulations in the past, I'd been shut down, told I was being petty or cruel. So what do? Document everything, Paris said firmly. Screenshots, recordings, timestamps. Follow the money, and most importantly... She paused, making sure I was looking her in the eye. Don't let her know you're onto her. The minute she suspects, she'll cover her tracks. My phone buzzed again. Eva. Sis, can you come with me to my appointment tomorrow? Could really use the support. I showed Paris the message. She raised an eyebrow. Interesting timing. Almost like she knows we're talking about her. Should I go? Absolutely. Paris's eyes gleamed. But first, let's get you wired up. My brother's a private investigator. He's got some recording equipment you can borrow. If she's lying, let's catch her in the act. I stared at my phone, at Eva's message with its perfectly placed heart emoji. All those years of manipulations, of watching her wrap our family around her finger, of being cast as the bad guy whenever I questioned her stories. Maybe it was finally time for the truth to come out. I typed back. Of course, sis. Anything for you. What time should I pick you up? You're doing the right thing, Paris assured me, seeing my hand shake as I set down the phone. If she's scamming your family, they need to know. And if I'm wrong? I whispered. If I'm really just the jealous sister they always said I was? Paris's expression softened. Then you'll know you did your due diligence. But Freya? She waited until I met her gaze. I don't think you're wrong. Not this time. The doctor had to reschedule, Eva announced as she slid into my car's passenger seat. But since you're already here, want to grab lunch? The tiny microphone Paris's brother had given me felt like it was burning a hole in my jacket pocket. Sure. What about your treatment, though? Oh, they'll fit me in next week. Eva waved dismissively, then perked up. Let's try that new place downtown. My treat. I bit back a response about how our parents' money was funding her generosity. Instead, I drove, watching from the corner of my eye as Eva tapped away on her phone, occasionally giggling at messages. Turn here, she suddenly instructed, pointing at a side street that definitely wasn't heading toward any restaurants. This isn't downtown, I said, but followed her direction. Just need to make a quick stop first. She flashed me her trademark smile. Won't take long. We pulled up in front of Nordstrom. Eva practically bounced out of the car, her designer purse swinging. Come on, they're holding something for me. Inside, Eva made a beeline for the luxury handbag section. A sales associate greeted her by name. Ms. Eva, your special order arrived. Fantastic. Eva clapped her hands together. Freya, you have to see this. It's the new limited edition collection. I watched as the associate brought out a bag that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent. Eva examined it with more attention than I'd ever seen her give her supposed medical documents. Perfect, she breathed, pulling out her wallet. I'll take it. The associate glanced at me as she rang up the sale. Will your sister be getting one too? We only have 3 left. Oh, Freya's not really into designer things, Eva said dismissively. She's more practical. My phone buzzed. A text from Paris. Amy says there's no way a stage 3 lymphoma patient would skip a scheduled treatment. They're too crucial. Eva, I said carefully, maybe we should hold off on the shopping, with all your medical expenses. She froze for a split second before recovering. Don't worry about that. I've been saving up. From where? The words slipped out before I could stop them. You said you had to quit your job because of the treatments. The sales associate looked between us uncomfortably before excusing herself. Why are you being like this? Eva's lower lip trembled. I thought you were here to support me, not interrogate me. I am supporting you. Ava's phone connected to my car's Bluetooth automatically as we walked back, cutting me off mid-sentence. A voice filled the car's speakers. Eva, darling, got your message about the fake doctor's notes. Don't worry, I can get those made up for you by tomorrow. The usual rate? Eva lunged for her phone, but the damage was done. Our eyes met in the sudden silence. That wasn't what it sounded like, she said quickly. Then what was it? My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. It's for work. A project I'm consulting on. You quit your job, remember, because of the cancer treatments you're apparently skipping to go shopping. Eva's face changed. The vulnerable sister act dropped away, replaced by something harder, colder. Pull over. No. Pull over, Freya, or I swear I'll tell Mom and Dad you physically threatened me. We both know who they'll believe. I pulled into a nearby parking lot, my hands shaking. Eva gathered her shopping bags, then turned to me with that sweet smile that had fooled our family for so many years. I know what you're doing, she said softly. Following me, asking all these questions, getting your little nurse friend to snoop around. Stop it. You're only going to hurt yourself. You're stealing from our parents. I'm accepting help from my loving family during a difficult time. She opened the car door. Don't make me destroy you, sis. We both know I can. They remortgaged their house for you. And they did it gladly. Eva stepped out, then leaned down to look at me. Because unlike you, I know how to make people love me. Don't forget that. I watched her walk away, her new designer bag swinging from her arm. My phone buzzed again. Another family group text from Eva. Had to cut my appointment short today. The side effects were too much. But blessed to have my big sister with me for support. Love you all. The responses flooded in immediately. Mom. My brave girls. Dad. So proud of you both. Freya, thank you for being there for your sister. I sat there staring at the messages, the recording device heavy in my pocket. Eva had just shown her true colors, but I was the only one who'd seen them. Now I had to prove it to everyone else, before she drained our parents dry. My phone buzzed one final time. A private message from Eva. Remember, sis? I always win. Play it again, Amy said, leaning forward in her office chair. The recording of Eva's Bluetooth mishap filled the room for the third time. I'd spent the past hour explaining everything to Amy, Paris's oncologist friend. She'd agreed to meet me after hours and now sat behind her desk, her expression growing darker with each detail. This is serious, she said, stopping the recording. Medical fraud isn't just morally wrong, it's illegal. I need your help, I replied, sliding Eva's supposed medical documents across the desk. She's using these to convince my parents. Can you verify if they're real? Amy picked up the papers, her professional demeanor cracking as she read. These are terrible forgeries. The letterhead's wrong, the medical terminology is inconsistent, and, she pointed to a signature, this doctor doesn't even exist. My phone rang, Eva's name flashing on the screen. I declined the call. 3 texts and 2 calls in the past hour, I explained. She's getting suspicious. Good. Amy started typing on her computer. That means she's worried. Look at this. She turned the screen toward me, showing a medical database. There's no record of Eva receiving treatment anywhere in the state. Not for lymphoma, not for anything. The phone rang again. Mom this time. I answered, putting it on speaker. Freya, why aren't you answering your sister's calls? She's very upset. I'm at work, Mom. The lie tasted bitter. What's wrong? Eva needs someone to drive her to her treatment tomorrow. Your father and I have that meeting with the bank about the second mortgage. Second mortgage? I shot up from my chair. Mom, you can't... Don't start, Freya. Your sister needs this. The first treatment payment barely covered. Mrs. Schmidt? Amy cut in, her voice carrying the authority of her profession. This is Dr. Amy Lowe. I'm an oncologist at St. Luke's. Could you please put Eva on the phone? I have some questions about her treatment plan. Silence crackled over the line. Then, who is this? Eva's doctor is at Memorial. That's interesting, Amy replied coolly. Because I've checked the medical records for every oncology department in the state. Your daughter isn't registered as a patient anywhere. The phone clicked dead. Well, Amy said, that's telling. My phone immediately lit up with text from Eva. What are you doing? Who was that woman? Answer me now. Then one from Mom. Eva's crying. How could you share her private medical information with strangers? Haven't we taught you anything about family loyalty? They're still believing her, I whispered. Not for long. Amy pulled out a fresh piece of paper. I'm writing an official statement confirming that Eva's documents are forgeries. We're also going to set up a meeting. Your whole family, in my office. Let's see her maintain this lie face-to-face with a real oncologist. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Yes, this is Dr. Harrison from Memorial. The voice was male, obviously disguised. I'm calling about Eva's payment details. Really? I interrupted. Dr. Harrison? The one who doesn't exist? Put my sister on the phone right now. The line went dead. Amy raised an eyebrow. Did she really just try to... Yes. I dropped my head into my hands. She did. Okay. Amy's chair scraped back as she stood. This ends now. I'm calling in a favor with hospital administration. We're setting up a fake consultation for tomorrow. Tell your family Eva has an emergency appointment with a specialist, me. They'll all need to be there. They won't come. Eva will find a way out of it. No, she won't. Amy's voice was steel. Because you're going to tell your parents that Memorial is investigating insurance fraud, and if Eva doesn't show up tomorrow with her entire support system, they'll be launching a criminal investigation. My phone lit up with another family group text from Eva. Such terrible news. My condition has worsened. The doctors say I need more aggressive treatment. Mom, Dad, I hate to ask, but look at that timing, Amy muttered. She's scrambling. I typed out a message to my parents. Emergency meeting tomorrow at St. Luke's Hospital, 2 p.m. Attendance mandatory. Memorial Hospital's fraud department is involved. This is serious. Eva's response was immediate. I'm too sick for meetings. My doctor said. Amy took my phone and typed, This is Dr. Lowe. Attendance is not optional. All medical documentation and payment records must be presented. Failure to appear will result in an immediate criminal investigation. The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, Eva replied, Fine, 2 p.m. She'll try to run, I said. Amy smiled grimly. Let her try. I've already contacted Memorial's legal department. One way or another, this charade ends tomorrow. St. Luke's Hospital waiting room felt like a powder keg at 1:55 p.m. Mom and Dad sat rigidly in their chairs, shooting me disapproving looks. Paris stood by the door, preventing any quick exits. Amy was in her office, preparing the final pieces of evidence. And Eva was nowhere to be seen. She's not coming, Mom said, checking her phone for the 100th time. She's too sick to handle this kind of stress. The elevator dinged. Eva walked out, wearing full makeup and designer clothes, not a hair out of place. Behind her was Bodhi, my friend from college who worked at the bank, the same bank my parents had been dealing with for their mortgages. What's he doing here? Eva demanded, pointing at Bodhi. I invited him, I replied, since he handles the mortgage department that's been processing Mom and Dad's loans. Eva's perfectly composed face cracked for just a second. I'm not feeling well. We should reschedule. Sit down, Eva, Paris said firmly, blocking the exit. You can't keep me here. Eva's voice rose. This is harassment. What's going on? Dad stood up. Freya, explain yourself. Amy chose that moment to emerge from her office. I can explain everything, Mr. Schmidt. Please, all of you, come in. Eva made one last attempt to leave. My real doctor advised against any additional consultations. Your real doctor? Amy raised an eyebrow. You mean Dr. Harrison? The one who doesn't exist at Memorial? Mom gasped. Dad's face went pale. That's ridiculous, Eva laughed, but her voice shook. I have all my paperwork right here. She reached into her designer bag. Don't bother, Bodhi spoke up. The bank's fraud department has already flagged those documents as forgeries. Eva's bag dropped to the floor. Papers spilled out, including blank prescription forms and what looked like a rubber stamp with a doctor's signature. Oh, Eva, Mom whispered. What have you done? Nothing. Eva's eyes filled with tears. They're all lying. They're jealous of the attention I'm getting, especially Freya. She's always hated that you love me more. Mrs. Schmidt, Amy interjected, I have proof that your daughter has never received cancer treatment at any hospital in this state. The documents she's been using to secure loans are forgeries. The medications she claimed to be taking don't match any legitimate lymphoma treatment protocol. But the money? Dad's voice cracked. We gave you thousands for treatments. Eva's tears dried instantly. Her face transformed into something I'd only seen glimpses of before. Cold, calculating, cruel. Fine, she spat. You want the truth? I took the money, and you gave it so willingly, didn't you? Poor little Eva, everyone's favorite, finally getting the attention she deserves. We mortgaged our house, Mom sobbed. Twice. And you'd have done it 3 times if I'd asked. Eva laughed hysterically. That's the funny part. You all made it so easy, especially you, Freya, the responsible big sister, always suspicious but never brave enough to stand up to me. Until now. She turned to me, smirking. What changed? Finally grew a spine? I pulled out my phone and played the Bluetooth recording. Ava's smirk faltered as her own words filled the room. Ava, darling, got your message about the fake doctor's notes. I've already submitted this to the police, Bodhi said quietly, along with the fraudulent loan applications. Eva lunged for the door, but Paris caught her arm. Running will only make it worse. You're all pathetic, Eva snarled, struggling against Paris's grip. So desperate for a family drama to rally around that you never questioned anything. The empty pill bottles, the miraculous recoveries, the shopping sprees during supposed chemo sessions. You saw what you wanted to see. How much? Dad's voice was hollow. How much did you take from us? Enough to live the life I deserve, Eva replied. And I'd do it again. Security arrived, followed by 2 police officers. As they led Eva away, she turned back one last time. You'll regret this, Freya. Family is supposed to protect each other. No, I said, watching my sister's mask finally crumble completely. Family is supposed to be honest with each other. After Eva disappeared into the elevator, the room fell silent. Mom collapsed into Dad's arms, sobbing. Bodhi touched my shoulder gently. The bank will work with your parents, he whispered. We'll figure something out. Amy cleared her throat. I've contacted Memorial's legal department. They're pressing charges for impersonating medical personnel. With the bank fraud charges, well, Eva won't be shopping at Nordstrom for quite a while. I watched my parents, their world shattered, and felt a strange mix of victory and heartbreak. The truth was out, but at what cost? You did the right thing, Paris said firmly, reading my expression. Sometimes love means being strong enough to stop someone from hurting themselves and others. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from Eva. I hope you're happy. You've ruined everything. I turned off my phone. The time for Eva's manipulations was over. Now came the harder part, healing. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Eva's face as she sat across from us, her designer outfit replaced by standard-issue jail clothes. Mom clutched Dad's hand, both looking years older than they had just days ago. I'll pay it all back, Eva said, her voice carrying that familiar manipulative sweetness. Just drop the charges, and we can pretend this never happened. $97,000, Dad replied, his voice trembling. That's how much you stole from us. Our retirement, our savings, our home equity. I was going to invest it, Eva protested. I had plans. The Gucci bags in your apartment tell a different story, Detective Morris interrupted, dropping a thick folder on the table. We found receipts totaling over $60,000 in luxury purchases just from the past 3 months. Ava's eyes darted around the room, searching for sympathy. Finding none, her mask finally cracked completely. You don't understand what it's like, she exploded. Being the pretty one, the charming one, it's exhausting. Everyone expects me to be perfect, successful. I needed to keep up appearances. By pretending to have cancer? I couldn't hold back anymore. By watching Mom and Dad destroy their future for your shopping addiction. Oh, shut up, Freya, Eva sneered. You're loving this, aren't you? Finally getting to be the good daughter? Detective Morris cleared his throat. Let's focus on the charges. We have documented evidence of medical fraud, financial fraud, forgery of official documents. I want to make a deal, Eva interrupted. That's not how this works, the detective replied. The evidence is overwhelming. Multiple counts of fraud, each carrying a potential sentence of... I have dirt on people. Eva's composure crumbled completely. Important people. I can tell you about other scams, bigger ones. Mom started crying softly. Dad just stared at the table, shoulders slumped. I'd like to play something, I said quietly, pulling out my phone. From the day at Nordstrom. Ava's eyes widened as her own voice filled the room, detailing her schemes, bragging about manipulating our parents, threatening to destroy me if I exposed her. That's inadmissible, she shrieked. I didn't consent to being recorded. Single-party consent state, Detective Morris replied calmly. The recording is perfectly legal. You planned this, Eva hissed at me. You set me up. No, Eva, you did this to yourself. The detective opened another folder. We've also received statements from several other families. Apparently, this isn't your first time running a medical scam. Mom's head snapped up. What? 3 other families in the past 2 years, he continued. Different cities, different stories, but same pattern. Fake cancer diagnoses, forged documents, emotional manipulation for financial gain. Eva? Dad's voice cracked. Is this true? Eva's face went through a rapid series of expressions: anger, calculation, fear, before settling on her familiar victim pose. I need help, she whimpered, tears flowing perfectly. I'm sick, just not with cancer. I have a shopping addiction, depression, anxiety. Stop it, I cut in. Just stop. No more manipulation. No more lies. The district attorney is offering a plea deal, Detective Morris said, in exchange for full confession and restitution to all victims. How long? Eva whispered. Minimum of 5 years. Eva lunged across the table, her handcuffs rattling. This is your fault, she screamed at me. I'm your sister. You were supposed to protect me. I am protecting you, I replied steadily. From yourself. The officers pulled Eva back as she continued screaming. Mom, Dad, are you really going to let them do this to me, after everything we've been through? Mom stood up slowly, tears streaming down her face. We love you, Eva, but what you did, we can't protect you from this. Dad? Eva's voice turned small, childlike. Daddy? Your little princess needs you. Dad finally looked up, his face aged a decade. My little princess wouldn't have watched me destroy my life to fund her shopping sprees. Eva's mask shattered completely. Fine, she spat. You want the truth? I never cared about any of you. You were all just ATMs with legs, so pathetically eager to help poor, sick Eva. You deserve to be scammed. The detective nodded to the officers, who began leading Eva away. I hate you all, she shrieked as they pulled her toward the door. Especially you, Freya. I'll make you pay for this. As her screams faded down the hallway, Mom collapsed into Dad's arms. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Detective Morris. You did good, he said quietly. It's not easy standing up to family, but you probably saved your parents from complete financial ruin. What happens now? I asked. She'll face the consequences of her actions, he replied, and hopefully get the help she actually needs. I watched my parents holding each other, their world completely shattered, and wondered if anything would ever be the same again. But at least now we could start rebuilding on a foundation of truth, not lies. The courtroom fell silent as Eva stood for sentencing. 3 months had passed since her arrest, and the toll was visible. Her designer clothes were replaced by a modest suit, her perfectly styled hair now plain and unstyled. Before I deliver the sentence, Judge Martinez said, would any of the victims like to make a statement? Mom and Dad stayed seated, but I stood. Eva's eyes locked onto mine, burning with hatred. Your Honor, I began, my voice steadier than I felt. My sister isn't just a criminal. She's someone who systematically destroyed the lives of people who loved her. Our parents lost their retirement, their home equity, and their dignity. But they lost something even more valuable, their trust in family. Other victims stood up. A middle-aged woman from Cincinnati spoke about remortgaging her house to help Eva, who'd posed as a sick co-worker. An elderly man from Detroit described emptying his savings for Eva's fake leukemia treatments. The defendant has shown a pattern of sophisticated, premeditated fraud, the prosecutor stated. She specifically targeted vulnerable people, exploiting their compassion for financial gain. Eva's lawyer stood. My client recognizes the severity of her actions. She's prepared to make full restitution. With what money? I interrupted, earning a sharp look from the judge. She spent it all on luxury items. Ms. Bennett, Eva's lawyer continued smoothly, has agreed to surrender all assets for liquidation. Additionally, she's been diagnosed with several mental health conditions that contributed to her actions. Eva dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I recognized the performance, the subtle trembling lip, the perfectly timed sniff. Would the defendant like to make a statement? Judge Martinez asked. Eva rose, her handcuffs clinking. Your Honor, I'm deeply ashamed of my actions. I lost myself in a spiral of addiction and desperation. My sister Freya tried to stop me, but I wouldn't listen. I betrayed everyone who loved me, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make amends. I felt Mom stiffen beside me. This was new. Eva had never admitted guilt before, never acknowledged my attempts to help. The judge studied Eva for a long moment. Ms. Bennett, your crimes were not just financial. You exploited one of humanity's most basic instincts, the desire to help sick loved ones. You didn't just steal money, you stole trust, hope, and faith in human goodness. Eva's facade cracked slightly. Furthermore, the judge continued, your pattern of behavior shows careful planning and manipulation. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a calculated series of cons targeting multiple victims across state lines. The prosecutor stood again. Your Honor, we've also discovered additional victims who've come forward. Enough! Eva suddenly screamed, her mask shattering completely. You want to know the truth? Fine. They were all stupid, so desperate to play hero that they threw their money at me. And you? She whirled to face me. You self-righteous bitch! You ruined everything! Ms. Bennett, the judge's gavel cracked like a gunshot. Control yourself or you'll be removed. Eva's lawyer tried to calm her, but she shrugged him off. You think this will stop me? She snarled. I'll find new victims. There's always someone stupid enough to believe a sad story. The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs. The judge's face hardened. Thank you, Ms. Bennett, for making my decision easier. I sentence you to 8 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You are ordered to make full restitution to all victims, and you are barred from handling any financial transactions for others during your supervised release. Eva lunged toward me, but the bailiffs caught her. I'll get you for this, Freya. You think prison will hold me? They dragged her away, her threats echoing down the hallway. Mom broke down crying. Dad just sat there looking shell-shocked. It's over, Paris whispered, squeezing my hand. She can't hurt anyone else now. Bodhi approached with some papers. The banks agreed to restructure your parents' loans, he told Dad. We'll work something out. Amy, who'd testified about the medical fraud, joined us. I've started a support group for families affected by medical fraud. You're all welcome to join. As we left the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. How does it feel to send your sister to prison? Did you suspect her all along? What would you say to other families facing similar situations? I stopped on the courthouse steps. I'd tell them that real love means being strong enough to stop someone you care about from hurting others and themselves. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same thing. Dad put his arm around me for the first time since this all began. We're proud of you, Freya. We should have listened to you years ago. Mom wiped her eyes. We have a lot of healing to do, as a family. I watched the police van carrying Eva drive away, feeling not triumph, but a deep, aching sadness for what could have been. But at least now the healing could begin, not just for our family, but for all the lives Eva had touched with her lies. And that's why I started the Truth in Medical Claims Foundation, I concluded, looking out at the packed auditorium. Because sometimes the biggest frauds come from those we trust the most. The audience applauded as I stepped away from the podium. Amy joined me on stage, carrying a stack of pamphlets about medical fraud awareness. Questions? She asked the crowd. A woman stood up, clutching a tissue. My daughter's been asking for money for treatments, but something feels off. I'm afraid to question her because, what if I'm wrong? That fear is exactly what fraudsters count on, I replied. But love doesn't mean blind trust. It means caring enough to verify. My phone buzzed, a message from the prison counselor. Eva's requesting another family session. Your choice if you want to attend. I slipped the phone back into my pocket as more hands rose with questions. Paris, manning the registration table, caught my eye and gave me a thumbs up. We'd already helped identify 3 potential fraud cases this week alone. After the session, Mom and Dad waited by the entrance. They looked different now, stronger, more clear-eyed. The support group had helped tremendously. Good session, Dad said, hugging me, though I still flinch every time you tell our story. That's why it needs telling, Mom added. We got an interesting letter today. She pulled out an envelope with the prison stamp. Eva's written another apology. Her 4th this month, I noted, right before her parole hearing. She seems different this time, Mom said hopefully. The counselor says, Mom, I kept my voice gentle. Remember what we learned in therapy. Eva needs to prove change through actions, not words. Bodhi appeared, carrying coffee for everyone. The Foundation's financial reports are ready, he said. We've helped recover over $2 million in fraudulent medical claims this quarter. Speaking of financial news, Dad added, we made the final payment on the house today. No more second mortgage. My throat tightened. Those extra mortgage payments had nearly bankrupted them, but they'd refused to let me help. Rebuilding on our own terms, they'd insisted. Dr. Lowe? A young man approached our group looking nervous. My brother's been showing us medical bills for his treatments, but when I called the hospital... Come with me, Amy said kindly, leading him toward her office. Another potential case, another family we might be able to help before it was too late. Paris joined us, holding up her phone. You're trending again. That interview you did about recognizing emotional manipulation in families really struck a chord. As long as it helps people, I said. That's all that matters. Speaking of helping people, Bodhi interjected. The bank's new fraud detection program caught 3 cases this week, all using the same tactics Eva used. Mom flinched at Eva's name, but her voice was steady. At least some good came from our experience. We're helping other families avoid what we went through. My phone buzzed again. Another message from the prison counselor. Eva's made progress, but she's still deflecting responsibility. Thought you should know before deciding about the family session. Dad noticed my expression. Eva? I nodded. She wants to meet. What are you going to do? Mom asked. I'll go, I decided. Not because I believe she's changed, but because I need her to understand something. Our foundation isn't about revenge. It's about prevention, about turning pain into purpose. Paris squeezed my shoulder. Want me to come with you? No. I smiled at my friend who'd stood by me through everything. I need to do this alone. The afternoon sun streamed through the foundation's windows, illuminating the wall of thank you letters from families we'd helped. Each one represented a story like ours, but with a different ending, one where the truth came out before lives were destroyed. Ready for the support group session? Amy asked, returning from her office. We have 3 new families joining today. I looked at my parents, now volunteers who shared their experience to help others. At Paris and Amy, who'd helped expose the truth. At Bodhi, whose bank now led the industry in fraud prevention. You know what Eva never understood? I said, gathering my materials for the support group. Real love isn't about getting, it's about giving, about helping others avoid the traps we fell into. Mom wiped away a tear. You turned our family's darkest moment into light for others. No, I corrected her. We did it together, because that's what real family does. We help each other grow stronger, even from our deepest wounds. As we headed to the support group room, I felt not the weight of Eva's betrayal, but the lightness of purpose. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in life's hardest lessons. We'd learned ours. Now it was time to help others learn theirs.
It's amazing how quickly your life can implode over a single phone call. One moment you're adjusting your veil, and the next, everything you've planned for months comes crashing down around you. I stared at my phone, my hands shaking as I reread the message from our wedding planner. 3 hours before my wedding, and she'd canceled. Just like that. No explanation, no apology, just a brief text saying she couldn't make it. This can't be happening, I whispered, my voice barely audible in the bridal suite. The champagne glasses clinked mockingly behind me as my sister Kelly rushed around, trying to coordinate with the venue staff. Samantha, breathe, Kelly said, gripping my shoulders. We can figure this out. David's family has connections. No, I cut her off sharply. I don't want to involve them, especially not Maggie. The mention of my soon-to-be mother-in-law made my stomach turn. Something about this felt wrong. The timing was too perfect, too calculated. My phone buzzed again. This time it was David. Mom's offering to help. She knows someone who can step in. Of course she did. I'd seen enough of Maggie's helpful interventions over the past year to recognize her handiwork. The caterer who suddenly doubled their prices, the florist who mysteriously lost our order, the venue that almost canceled due to a scheduling conflict. Each time, Maggie swooped in with her own preferred vendor, her own vision of what our wedding should be. "Tell your mother thanks, but we've got it handled," I typed back, even though we definitely didn't. The door burst open, and Sophia, our mutual friend, rushed in. I just ran into Maggie in the hallway. She's already calling someone named Patricia to take over the planning. My fingers curled into fists, crushing the delicate lace of my dress. Did she seem surprised about our planner canceling? Sophia hesitated, and that pause told me everything I needed to know. "She was smiling, wasn't she?" I asked, my voice hollow. "Like she just won something," Sophia admitted quietly. Kelly swore under her breath. "That manipulative—" "Ladies!" A smooth voice interrupted from the doorway. Maggie stood there, perfect in her designer suit, not a hair out of place. "I've taken care of everything. Patricia will be here in 20 minutes. She's much more suitable for a Mitchell family wedding." The way she emphasized suitable made my skin crawl. I caught her subtle glance at my dress, the one I'd chosen instead of her recommended designer. "How fortunate that Patricia was available on such short notice," I said, meeting her gaze, almost like she was waiting for the call. Something flickered in Maggie's eyes. Satisfaction, maybe, or challenge. "Providence smiles on those who plan ahead, dear. Or those who orchestrate disasters," I muttered after she left. Kelly grabbed my arm. "Sam, you don't think she actually convinced our wedding planner to bail last minute? Created chaos so she could swoop in and take control?" I laughed bitterly. It's exactly what she'd do. I walked to the window, watching guests arrive in their expensive cars. Below, I could see David greeting people, handsome in his tuxedo, completely unaware of his mother's machinations. "What are you going to do?" Sophia asked. I touched the window, leaving a small smudge on the perfect glass. "For now, I'm going to marry David, but after that—" I turned to face them, something hard and cold settling in my chest. "I'm going to make sure Maggie regrets every single game she's played with my life." "Sam," Kelly's voice held a warning. "No," I said firmly. "I'm done being the bigger person. She wants to play games? Fine. But she's about to learn that this veterinarian from the wrong side of town knows exactly how to deal with snakes." The mirror reflected my image: white dress, perfect makeup, and eyes that had lost their last trace of innocence. In 3 hours, I'd be a Mitchell. And then the real game would begin. Patricia's heels clicked against the marble floor like a metronome counting down to disaster. The reception hall buzzed with whispered conversations and judgmental glances. My wedding had become exactly what I'd fought against: a Mitchell Society spectacle. "The ice sculpture should be centered," Maggie commanded, waving her hand dismissively at the staff. "And those flowers are completely wrong. Patricia, didn't we discuss burgundy roses?" "The bride specifically requested wildflowers," Patricia replied, her voice wavering. I stood in the doorway, still in my wedding dress, watching my carefully planned celebration transform into Maggie's vision. David appeared beside me, his hand finding mine. "It looks different," he said carefully. "It looks like your mother's annual charity gala," I replied, keeping my voice low, complete with her usual crowd of social climbers. As if on cue, I spotted several unfamiliar faces among our guests, Maggie's friends who definitely hadn't been on our invitation list. "I'll talk to her," David promised, but I grabbed his arm. "Don't. It's what she wants, to create drama between us on our wedding day." A commotion near the cake table drew our attention. Kelly was arguing with Patricia, her hands gesturing at the elaborate 5-tier monstrosity that had replaced our original choice. "That's not the cake they ordered," Kelly insisted. "Show me the contract." Patricia's eyes darted to Maggie, who swooped in like a perfectly coiffed vulture. There was a tragic mishap with the original baker. "Fortunately, I know the most extraordinary pâtissier." "Tragic mishap?" I interrupted, stepping forward. "What exactly happened to our cake, Maggie?" The room grew quieter, guests pretending not to eavesdrop while hanging on every word. "Oh, darling." Maggie's smile was razor sharp. "You really should be mingling with your guests instead of worrying about such details. Although," her gaze swept over the crowd, "I noticed several of your invited guests couldn't make it. How unfortunate." My stomach clenched. I'd noticed the same thing. Several of my friends and colleagues had canceled last minute, citing various emergencies. "Samantha," a gravelly voice cut through the tension. Evelyn Mitchell stood nearby, elegant in her vintage Chanel, watching the scene with shrewd eyes. "Come sit with me for a moment." I followed David's grandmother to a quiet corner, aware of Maggie's gaze burning into my back. "Your mother-in-law," Evelyn said, adjusting her pearl necklace, "has always believed control equals love. She planned David's entire life before he could walk, when he defied her by choosing you." She paused, studying my face. "Well, let's just say she's not used to losing." "I'm not something to win or lose," I said through gritted teeth. "No, you're not." Evelyn's eyes glittered. "You're something far more dangerous. You're change, and Maggie fears change more than anything." Before I could respond, Tom appeared, his face tight with concern. "Sam, got a minute? There's something you need to see." He led me to a service corridor, pulling out his phone. "I overheard Patricia on the phone earlier. Look at these texts." The messages showed a conversation between Patricia and Maggie from weeks ago, planning today's takeover in detail. Every emergency had been orchestrated, every replacement vendor prearranged. "She's been planning this for months," Tom said quietly. I handed the phone back, my hands steady despite the rage building inside me. "Thank you, Tom. This is helpful." "Sam?" He hesitated. "What are you going to do?" I watched David across the room, laughing with his father, blissfully unaware of his mother's machinations. "Right now, I'm going to smile, dance with my husband, and play the grateful daughter-in-law. And later, I said, smoothing my dress, "I'm going to learn everything there is to know about Maggie Mitchell. Every secret, every weakness, every skeleton in her designer closet. Because this isn't just about my wedding anymore. It's about making sure she never tries to control anyone's life again." Tom's expression shifted from concern to determination. "Whatever you need, I'm in." I returned to the reception, accepting congratulations and pretending not to notice how Maggie had rearranged the seating to separate me from my family. But with each fake smile and polite nod, I was taking mental notes, gathering ammunition. The game had changed. Maggie thought she was teaching me a lesson about power and control. Instead, she was teaching me exactly how to destroy her. The email arrived during surgery. I was elbow deep in a German shepherd's abdomen when my phone buzzed repeatedly on the counter. Only after I'd closed up and sent the dog to recovery did I check the messages. "Did you see what she posted?" Kelly's text read, followed by several screenshots. There it was, on Maggie's social media. A carefully crafted post about her concerns for David's well-being, subtly highlighting my working-class background and suggesting I was taking advantage of the Mitchell family's generosity. She'd even dredged up an old photo of me from college, looking decidedly unglamorous at a protest rally. "Your wife seems to have quite the colorful past," read one comment from her society friends. "Money can't buy class," wrote another. Tom appeared in my office doorway as I scrolled through the comments. Those society vultures are having a field day with this. She's trying to paint me as a gold digger, I said, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. But that's not even the worst part. I showed him the email that had triggered Kelly's warning. It was from the veterinary board announcing a surprise audit of my practice. The sender's address belonged to one of Maggie's closest friends. She's going after my career now. The words tasted bitter. This isn't just about social standing anymore. Sam, Tom hesitated. There's something else you should know. I overheard David on the phone earlier. Maggie's been pressuring him about the prenup, suggesting he add new conditions. The room seemed to tilt slightly. We already signed the prenup. She can't. She's claiming new evidence of financial misconduct on your part. A knock interrupted us. David stood in the doorway, his expression troubled. Can we talk? Tom squeezed my shoulder as he left, closing the door behind him. Your mother's busy today, I said before David could speak. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I usually found endearing. Sam, she's just worried about what? That I'll steal the family silver? Or maybe she's worried I'll expose how she's been manipulating everyone around her for years? It's not that simple. He pulled out his phone, showing me another post, this one from an anonymous account, detailing past Mitchell family scandals. Someone's been digging into our family history. Mom thinks it's you. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my own ears. Of course she does, because heaven forbid anyone else have dirt on the mighty Mitchell family. Is it you? The question hung between us like a blade. No, I said quietly, but I'm starting to wish it was. Before he could respond, Evelyn appeared in the doorway, elegant as always but with an urgency in her movements. David, your father needs you at the office, immediately. Her tone left no room for argument. After he left, Evelyn closed the door and turned to me. Maggie's playing a dangerous game, but she's not as clever as she thinks. Did you know she tried this same routine with Richard's first fiancé? I hadn't known Richard had been engaged before Maggie. What happened? The girl left, couldn't handle the pressure. Evelyn's eyes glittered. But you're made of stronger stuff, aren't you? She pulled an envelope from her purse. These are copies of some interesting documents about Maggie's past, including how she really joined the Mitchell family. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. The contents made my eyes widen. Why are you showing me this? Because, Evelyn said, her voice steel-wrapped in silk. Sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to prove you can hit harder. The question is, are you willing to throw the punch? I stared at the documents, thinking of the audit, the social media attacks, the prenup manipulation, each move designed to isolate and discredit me. Yes, I said finally. I am. Evelyn smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Good, because Maggie's not going to stop until someone makes her. Just remember, in this family, nothing is ever quite what it seems. She left me alone with the documents, their revelations burning in my hands like hot coals. I had what I needed to destroy Maggie's carefully constructed image, but as I read deeper, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played by forces I didn't fully understand. The question was, whose game was I really playing? The Mitchell family's annual charity gala loomed ahead, all gleaming marble and crystal chandeliers. I adjusted my borrowed designer dress, feeling like an imposter despite the perfect fit. The documents Evelyn had given me burned in my clutch, waiting for the right moment. Ready? David squeezed my hand as we approached the entrance. I nodded, noticing how he unconsciously straightened his tie. Another nervous tell. He knew something was wrong, but couldn't quite piece it together. Inside, Maggie held court near the champagne fountain, her laugh carrying across the room with practiced precision. Her eyes found mine, and her smile sharpened. "Darling," she called out, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "I was just telling everyone about your wonderful work with animals. So, noble." The way she said noble made it sound like a character flaw. "Speaking of noble causes," I replied, matching her volume, "I heard the most fascinating story about your early days with the Mitchell Family Foundation." Her champagne glass paused halfway to her lips. Tom appeared at my elbow right on cue. "Samantha, could I borrow you for a moment? There's someone you should meet." He led me to a corner where Kelly waited with an elderly man I didn't recognize. His face was familiar somehow, but I couldn't place it. "This is Harold Bennett," Kelly said quietly. "He used to work for the Mitchell Foundation." The old man's eyes were sharp despite his frail appearance. "You're the one asking questions about Margaret Mitchell." "I'm interested in the truth," I said carefully. "Truth?" He gave a bitter laugh. "That woman wouldn't know truth if it bit her. I was there when she orchestrated the takeover of the foundation from Richard's first wife. Destroyed that poor woman's reputation completely." My hand tightened on my clutch. "What exactly did she do?" Before he could answer, Evelyn appeared, looking alarmed. "Samantha, dear, we need to talk. Now." She practically dragged me into an empty study, closing the door firmly. "You need to be very careful about what you do next." "Why? Because I'm getting too close to the truth about Maggie? Because you're not seeing the whole picture." Evelyn's usual poise cracked slightly. "Those documents I gave you, they're not just about Maggie. They could destroy this entire family." A knock interrupted us. David entered, his face uncharacteristically stern. "I just got an interesting call from the bank. Someone's been accessing old foundation records using my credentials." My stomach dropped. I hadn't been careful enough covering my tracks. "That would be me," Evelyn said smoothly. "I asked Samantha to help me investigate some discrepancies." David's expression darkened. "Does this have anything to do with the anonymous posts about our family?" "What posts?" I asked, but my voice sounded hollow even to me. He pulled out his phone, showing us a fresh social media post, one I hadn't seen before. It detailed exactly how Maggie had manipulated her way into the Mitchell family, including documents I recognized from my own research, but I hadn't posted them. "This isn't me," I said, looking at Evelyn. Her face gave nothing away. The door opened again. Maggie stood there, Richard beside her looking grave. "No," she said. "It wasn't you. It was me." The room went silent. "I've been posting my own secrets," Maggie continued, "because someone's been threatening to expose much worse ones. And now I know who." Her gaze fixed on Evelyn, who merely smiled. "You always were clever, Margaret," Evelyn said, "but not quite clever enough." I looked between them, suddenly feeling like a pawn in a much larger game. The documents in my clutch weren't ammunition, they were bait, and I'd taken it completely. "What's really going on here?" David demanded. "Ask your grandmother," Maggie said bitterly. "Ask her about the real reason she brought Samantha into this fight." Evelyn's smile never wavered, but her eyes were cold. "Sometimes, dear, the best way to destroy an enemy is to give them exactly what they want." I felt David tense beside me as the truth began to dawn. I wasn't fighting Maggie's manipulation. I was caught in the crossfire of a decades-old war between two masters of deception, and I had no idea whose side I should be on. The Mitchell Foundation's quarterly board meeting wasn't meant to be a battlefield, but I could taste the tension in the air as I took my seat beside David. Maggie sat across from us, perfectly composed despite the whispers circulating about her latest social media scandal. Evelyn presided at the head of the table, her presence somehow both reassuring and threatening. "Before we begin," Richard said, shuffling through papers, "there's the matter of unauthorized access to foundation records." My fingers tightened around my pen. Beside me, David's breathing changed slightly. "Fascinating timing," Maggie said, her voice silk over steel, "especially given the recent articles about our family's history." "Perhaps we should discuss the Foundation's original mission," Evelyn interrupted smoothly. "Back when Catherine Mitchell was chair." The room went still. Catherine, Richard's first wife, the woman Maggie had replaced. I watched Maggie's face, catching the slight twitch in her jaw. "Ancient history," Maggie dismissed, but her knuckles were white around her water glass. "Not entirely." I pulled out my tablet, heart pounding. "I've been reviewing the original charter. There are some interesting discrepancies between then and now." "Samantha," David warned quietly, but I continued. "For instance, the educational outreach program Catherine started. It was quite successful until it was suddenly discontinued in 1992. I met Maggie's eyes. "The same year you joined the board. Those programs were inefficient," Maggie snapped. "They were helping working-class students attend college," I countered. "Students like me." Evelyn's smile grew sharper. "Perhaps we should put it to a vote, reinstating some of Catherine's original initiatives." "Absolutely not." Maggie stood, her chair scraping back. "This is ridiculous. We all know what's happening here. Your new daughter-in-law is trying to—" "To what?" I interrupted, standing as well. "Expose how you've twisted this foundation to serve your social climbing, or how you used it to destroy Catherine's reputation when she started asking questions about missing funds." The words hung in the air like smoke. I hadn't meant to reveal that piece yet, but Maggie's face told me I'd hit home. "You have no idea what you're talking about," she hissed. "Show them the documents, Samantha," Evelyn commanded softly. My tablet shook slightly as I pulled up the files. Financial records from 1992, specifically transfers to offshore accounts under the name M. Reynolds. Your maiden name, Maggie. Richard's face had gone pale. "Margaret? It's not what you think," Maggie said quickly. "I was protecting us. Catherine was going to expose—" "That you were embezzling," I suggested. "That the entire Mitchell fortune was built on fraud," Maggie shouted. The silence that followed was deafening. "Well," Evelyn said into the quiet, "that's not quite how I planned this revelation." David stood slowly. "Grandmother, what exactly is going on?" "Ask your father," she replied. "He's known all along, haven't you, Richard?" I looked between them all, Maggie's desperate face, Richard's guilt, Evelyn's calculated calm, and David's growing horror. This wasn't just about Maggie anymore. The entire foundation, the Mitchell legacy, was built on lies. "The vote stands," Evelyn declared. "We'll decide today whether to reinstate Catherine's programs and review all financial decisions made since 1992. "You can't," Maggie whispered. "Actually, with Samantha's proxy vote from the shares David gave her as a wedding gift, we can." I felt David stiffen beside me. We both knew he hadn't given me any shares. "I never," he began. "Check your papers, dear," Evelyn smiled. "You'd be surprised what you've signed recently." The realization hit me like ice water. I wasn't just a pawn in their game. I was the weapon they'd both been waiting to use. Maggie had tried to destroy me to protect her secrets, while Evelyn had cultivated me to expose them. And now I had to choose, follow through with the vote and potentially destroy the family I'd married into, or back down and let decades of corruption continue. David's hand found mine under the table, squeezing once, but I couldn't tell if it was in support or warning. The board members waited, pens poised over their voting cards, while I stood at the crossroads between justice and destruction. "The vote," Evelyn prompted, "begins now." The Mitchell Summer Gala sparkled with false perfection, like a diamond made of glass. I watched from the terrace as David paced near the fountain, phone pressed to his ear, his gestures growing more agitated with each passing moment. "The press is already here," Kelly whispered, appearing at my elbow. "Maggie's people are trying to control the narrative, but the truth has a way of slipping through," Evelyn finished, joining us with 2 champagne flutes. She offered me one with a knowing smile. "Especially when it's carefully guided." The documents I'd planned to reveal tonight felt heavy in my clutch, but something about Evelyn's confidence made me uneasy. "You never told me how you got these records," I said carefully. "Didn't I?" Her eyes glittered. "Perhaps you should ask Catherine." My glass nearly slipped from my fingers. "Catherine is dead." "Is she?" Evelyn's smile widened as she gestured toward the arriving guests. A woman in her 60s stepped out of a black car, her presence causing an immediate stir. Maggie across the garden went absolutely still. "You planned this," I realized, watching the color drain from Maggie's face. "All of it." "Of course I did." Evelyn sipped her champagne. "And you played your part beautifully." David was walking toward us now, his expression dark. "The board members are all here, and they've seen the news." "What news?" I pulled out my phone, finding dozens of missed notifications. The headlines hit like physical blows. "Mitchell Foundation fraud exposed." "Decades of financial misconduct." "Whistleblower reveals family corruption." But I hadn't leaked anything yet. "You didn't really think I'd leave this to chance, did you?" Evelyn asked softly. "The documents I gave you were copies. The originals went to the press an hour ago." The garden spun slightly. "You used me." "We all used each other," Catherine said, joining our group. Her voice was stronger than I'd expected. "Maggie used you to protect her position. Evelyn used you to destroy it. And you?" She smiled sadly. "You used them both for revenge." "Sam!" David's voice cracked slightly. "Did you know about this?" Before I could answer, Maggie stormed over, her perfect composure finally shattered. "You vindictive little—" "Careful, Margaret," Evelyn cut in. "The press is watching." "The press?" Maggie laughed, the sound brittle. "You've destroyed everything. The foundation, the family name." "You did that," I snapped, "when you stole it from Catherine." "I protected this family." Maggie's voice rose. "Everything I did was to preserve what we built." "What you stole," Catherine corrected quietly. "And now," Evelyn added, "what you've lost." Cameras flashed as reporters approached. David stepped away from me, his expression unreadable. In that moment, I realized I'd lost him too. "David," I reached for him, but he pulled back. "Was any of it real?" he asked. "Us? Or was I just part of your revenge?" "I loved you," I whispered. "I still do. But you loved revenge more." He walked away as the reporters swarmed, their questions becoming a deafening roar. Maggie was being led inside by Richard, both their faces ashen. Catherine stood watching them, victory and sadness warring in her expression. And Evelyn? She simply smiled, raising her glass in a mock toast. "Congratulations, dear," she said. "You've won." But as I stood there, watching my marriage crumble and the Mitchell family implode, victory felt like ashes in my mouth. I'd wanted justice, but this felt like destruction. I'd wanted to expose the truth, but I'd become part of the lie. Kelly appeared beside me, gripping my arm. "We need to go, now." As she led me through the chaos, I caught a final glimpse of David. He stood between his parents, his back straight, his shoulders bearing the weight of his family's disgrace. He didn't look back. The night air hit my face as we reached Kelly's car, and only then did I realize I was crying. "What have I done?" I whispered. But the only answer was the sound of camera shutters and the distant murmur of a family falling apart. a destruction I'd helped orchestrate, even if I hadn't pulled the final trigger. I'd become exactly what I'd hated, a manipulator, a destroyer, a Mitchell in all but name. And now I had nothing left to show for it but the bitter taste of a victory that felt more like defeat. 3 days after the gala, I found Maggie sitting alone in her garden, methodically cutting roses from their stems. The morning papers lay scattered around her feet, their headlines screaming about the Mitchell family's disgrace. "Have you come to gloat?" She didn't look up from her pruning. "I came to understand." I remained standing, watching her hands shake slightly as she cut another rose. "Why did you do it? All of it? You think you've won something, don't you?" She finally met my eyes. "Destroyed the big bad Mitchell matriarch, exposed all our dirty secrets, but you have no idea what you've really done." "Then tell me." She laughed, the sound brittle as frozen grass. "Did Catherine tell you why she really left? Not the sanitized version Evelyn fed you, but the truth?" Before I could answer, David appeared at the garden entrance. He looked exhausted, his usual polish replaced by shadows under his eyes. "The FBI is here," he said quietly. Maggie's scissors dropped to the ground. "Already?" "They're not here for you." David's voice cracked slightly. "They're here for grandmother." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "What?" "Oh, you clever fool," Maggie whispered. "You never wondered why Evelyn was so eager to help you? Why she had all those convenient documents ready? The Foundation's corruption was a cover?" David stepped closer, his face hard. "For something much worse, the missing money, the offshore accounts. They weren't Mom's, they were Evelyn's." "But Catherine?" "Found out," Maggie finished, "and Evelyn made sure she disappeared. I didn't drive Catherine away, Samantha. I helped her escape. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. I sank onto a stone bench, the morning sun suddenly too bright. All these years," Maggie continued, "I played the villain, let everyone think I was the controlling monster, because as long as they were watching me, they weren't watching Evelyn," I finished, bile rising in my throat. "And now, thanks to your crusade for justice, the one person who could keep her in check is ruined." Maggie's smile was razor sharp. "While Evelyn walks away with everything." "She's already gone, isn't she?" I asked David. He nodded. "Left last night. The Foundation's accounts are empty." "You were so focused on revenge," Maggie said softly. "You never saw you were just another piece on her board. Just like I was, just like Catherine. Where is Catherine now?" "Safe, hidden, which is more than I can say for any of us anymore." Footsteps on gravel announced the FBI agent's approach. David moved to stand between them and his mother, but Maggie waved him away. "Don't," she said. "Some fights you can't win." As the agents led Maggie away for questioning, I caught her final whisper. "I hope your revenge was worth it." David and I stood in the ruined garden, surrounded by half-cut roses and scattered newspapers. The distance between us felt infinite. "I never wanted this," I said. "Didn't you?" His voice was tired. "You wanted to destroy my family. Congratulations, mission accomplished." "David." "The funny thing is," he continued, "Mom was trying to protect me. From Evelyn, from the truth, from all of it. And I let you tear her down because I thought I was choosing love over loyalty." He turned to leave, then paused. "But maybe they're the same thing. And maybe we both forgot that somewhere along the way." I watched him walk away, understanding finally hitting me like a physical blow. In my quest for justice, I'd become the weapon Evelyn needed. In trying to expose one manipulator, I'd played right into the hands of a worse one. The roses Maggie had been cutting lay scattered across the ground, their thorns still sharp, their petals already beginning to wilt. Like revenge, I realized. beautiful from a distance, but deadly up close, and ultimately destined to decay. I pulled out my phone and dialed Kelly's number. "I need your help," I said when she answered. "We need to find Catherine. She's the only one who knows the whole truth." And then what? I looked at the abandoned garden, at the chaos I'd helped create. Then we fix what I broke. All of it. But as police cars pulled up to the Mitchell estate, their lights painting the roses in flashes of red and blue, I wondered if anything could ever be truly fixed once it had been so thoroughly shattered. The small cafe on the outskirts of Seattle smelled like rain and coffee. Catherine sat across from me, her hands wrapped around a steaming mug, looking nothing like the polished society woman from the gala. Here, she seemed more real, more human. "Evelyn's in Singapore," I said, sliding the envelope across the table. "These are the account numbers Kelly traced." Catherine nodded, unsurprised. She always had exit strategies. The question is, what are you going to do with this information? Before I could answer, the cafe door chimed. David walked in, followed by Maggie. The sight of them together made my chest ache. They joined us silently, David's hand brushing mine as he sat down. The touch felt like forgiveness and accusation all at once. "The FBI cleared me," Maggie said quietly, "but the foundation is finished." "Good." Catherine's voice was steel. "It needs to be rebuilt from the ground up, properly this time." "With whose money?" David asked. "Mine." I pulled out another envelope. "I'm selling my clinic." The silence that followed felt heavy with possibility and pain. "Sam, no," David started, but I cut him off. "I broke this. I need to fix it." I met Maggie's eyes. "Not for revenge or justice, but because it's right. And what do you want in return?" Maggie's question carried years of distrust. "Nothing." I smiled slightly. "That's the point." Catherine reached into her bag, producing a worn leather journal. "These are the original foundation documents. The real ones, not Evelyn's versions. They outline a different kind of legacy, one about helping people, not controlling them." "Like the educational programs," I said. "Yes." Catherine opened the journal. "Programs that could help students like you, Samantha, not because they're worthy of Mitchell charity, but because everyone deserves a chance to build their own legacy." David's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. "It won't be easy," Maggie warned. "The Mitchell name is toxic now." "Then we'll use a different name," I suggested. "The Catherine Turner Foundation." Both Catherine and Maggie looked startled. "Why Turner?" Catherine asked. "Because names have power," I said, "and it's time to build something new instead of fighting over something old." David's thumb traced circles on my palm as Maggie and Catherine exchanged long looks across the table. "I'll help," Maggie said finally, "but not as a director, as an advisor only." "Agreed," Catherine nodded. "And you, David?" "I go where my wife goes." His voice was quiet but certain. The rain outside intensified, drumming against the windows like applause or perhaps warning. We sat there, 5 people who had hurt each other in countless ways, trying to build something from the wreckage of revenge. "There's one condition," I said, meeting each of their eyes in turn. "Complete transparency. No more secrets, no more manipulation. We do this in the open or not at all." "Even if it means facing uncomfortable truths?" Maggie asked. "Especially then." Catherine closed her journal with a soft thud. "Then let's begin." As we left the cafe, David pulled me aside while Maggie and Catherine walked ahead, already deep in discussion about restructuring plans. "You're really selling your clinic?" he asked. "Already sold." I watched his face carefully. "Unless you think I'm making another mistake." "No." He touched my cheek gently. "I think you're finally making things right. We all are." The rain had stopped, leaving the air clean and sharp. Ahead of us, Maggie and Catherine paused, waiting. Behind us lay the ruins of what revenge had wrought. Before us stretched the harder path of reconstruction. I took David's hand and stepped forward, understanding finally that true justice isn't about destroying what's broken, it's about building something better from the pieces. But as we walked toward our waiting family, I felt the weight of Evelyn's account numbers in my pocket. Some choices, I realized, would have to wait for another day. Some forms of justice require patience rather than revenge. For now, though, we had work to do. And maybe that was enough.
Success tastes like expensive champagne and validation. At least that's what I thought until my mother's name lit up my phone screen, shattering 5 years of carefully maintained silence. I stared at the notification, my finger hovering over the reject button. The bubbles in my glass had gone flat, much like my celebration mood. Around me, my colleagues from Horizon Solutions continued their animated chatter, toasting my promotion to department head. "Jasmine, you have to see what marketing just posted about you." Tyler waved his phone, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from my screen. My mother, Linda, the woman who'd spent my entire childhood comparing me to my perfect sister Brittany. The phone kept vibrating, insistent as a wasp at a picnic. Tyler's smile faded when he noticed my expression. "Everything okay?" I excused myself and stepped onto the office balcony, where the city lights blurred beneath me. My hands shook as I accepted the call. "Darling," Linda's voice dripped honey and arsenic. "I saw your announcement on Instagram. Department head at 28. We're all so proud." We, as if she had any right to include herself in my achievements. "How did you get this number?" "Oh, your Aunt Karen mentioned it. We've been following your career, you know. Your father and I always knew you'd do well." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound that scared a nearby pigeon into flight. "Really? Because I remember you telling me I'd never amount to anything without the family's connections. Water under the bridge, surely." She paused, and I could practically see her perfectly manicured nails drumming against whatever overpriced surface was nearest. "We're having a family reunion next month. Everyone will be there. Brittany's flying in from Paris, and your grandmother Eleanor is coming too." My throat tightened at the mention of Gran. She was the only one who'd supported me when I'd cut ties with the family, the only one who understood why I had to leave. "I'm busy," I said automatically. "Busy avoiding your family?" "Darling, you're not that little girl anymore. You've proven yourself. Isn't it time to let go of old grievances?" Old grievances, like the time she'd torn up my art school acceptance letter because it didn't fit the family image. Or when she'd given Brittany my college fund because she showed more promise. "Why now?" I demanded. "Why reach out after 5 years?" "Because we're family," she said, as if that explained everything. "And family should celebrate success together. Think about it. You could show everyone how far you've come. Brittany would love to hear about your work." I bet she would. My sister had always been fascinated by my failures, less so by my successes. "I'll think about it," I said, knowing I wouldn't. "Wonderful. I'll text you the details. And Jasmine?" Her voice softened to that dangerous velvet tone I remembered from childhood. "Do try to dress appropriately this time. You know how these gatherings can be." The call ended, but the tension remained, coiling in my stomach like a snake. Through the glass doors, I could see Tyler watching me with concern. He'd been there through the worst of my family drama, picking up the pieces when I'd finally broken free. My phone buzzed again, a text this time with an address and date. Below it, a photo appeared. My mother, father, and Brittany posed perfectly in their perfect living room, wearing perfect smiles that never quite reached their eyes. I should delete it, block the number, continue building my life without their toxic influence. Instead, I found myself saving the details, a plan already forming in my mind. They wanted to see how far I'd come? Fine. I'd show them exactly what their neglect had created. Someone who'd learned to fight back. My champagne sat abandoned on a nearby table, warm and flat. I picked it up anyway and drained it in one go. Sometimes revenge, like champagne, is best served cold. Gran's house always smelled like lavender and rebellion. I found her in her garden, pruning roses with the same precision she'd once used to cut toxic people from her life. The silver streaks in her hair caught the afternoon sun as she turned to face me. "I wondered when you'd show up," Eleanor said, setting down her shears. "Linda called." Of course she had. My mother's network of informants rivaled the CIA. "Then you know about the reunion." "I know it's a trap." Gran's eyes narrowed. "What I don't know is why you're considering walking into it." I helped her gather the cut roses, their thorns pressing against my palms. "Maybe I'm tired of running." "You never ran, Jasmine. You escaped." She led me inside where 2 teacups already waited. Earl Grey, my favorite. There's a difference. The kitchen walls held photographs spanning decades, weddings, graduations, family gatherings. I noticed how the recent ones showed only half the family, split along battle lines drawn years ago. "Brittany's back from Paris," I said, watching Gran's reaction. Her lips tightened. "Yes, another failed fashion venture, I hear. Though your mother calls it a strategic career pivot." She poured the tea with steady hands. "Did you know she's been asking about your company?" My cup froze halfway to my lips. "What?" "Madison overheard her at Karen's dinner party last week. Very interested in Horizon Solutions' client list." Gran's voice carried a warning. "Your sister always did prefer stealing success to earning it." A memory surfaced. Brittany, 16, wearing my award-winning art piece like a crown at the school exhibition, accepting praise while I watched from the shadows, mother beaming at her golden child. My phone buzzed. A text from Tyler. "Your sister just requested to connect on LinkedIn. Heads up." "They're planning something," I said, showing Gran the message. "Of course they are." She reached across the table, her fingers closing over mine. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Before I could answer, another text arrived. Brittany. "Sis, let's grab coffee tomorrow? So much to catch up on." XOXO. Gran read the message over my shoulder and snorted. "The last time she wanted to catch up, you lost that gallery opportunity." I remember. The rejection letter had arrived suspiciously soon after Brittany learned which gallery I'd applied to. "Pure coincidence," Mother had said, just like all the other coincidences that seemed to follow my sister's interest in my life. "You could say no," Gran suggested. "Keep your distance. Stay safe." I stared at the roses we'd gathered, blood red and perfect. Or I could say yes and find out what they're really after. "Jasmine." Gran's voice carried decades of concern. "Some gardens are better left unpruned. And some weeds need to be pulled out by the roots." I typed a quick reply to Brittany, suggesting a trendy cafe downtown. Besides, I'm not that naive art student anymore. "No," Gran agreed, studying me with a mixture of pride and worry. "You're much more dangerous now." My phone lit up with Brittany's immediate response. "Perfect. Can't wait to hear all about your promotion. Mom says you're doing so well." I could almost taste the poison beneath the sweetness. 7 years ago, I would have believed her enthusiasm. 7 years ago, I still thought family meant protection, not predation. "Just promise me something," Gran said as I gathered my things to leave. "Whatever you're planning, and don't tell me you're not planning something, remember that revenge is like those roses. Beautiful, but the thorns cut both ways." I hugged her goodbye, breathing in that familiar lavender scent. "I learned from the best, Gran. You taught me how to handle thorns." As I drove home, Brittany's text glowed on my passenger seat like a challenge. Tomorrow, I'd walk into that cafe armed with years of accumulated pain and a newly forged armor of success. Let them try their games. This time, I knew how to play. And I had something they didn't. Nothing left to lose. The cafe's security footage played on my laptop screen in grainy black and white. I'd watched it 7 times now, studying Brittany's movements during our casual catch-up. The way she'd positioned herself to face the door. How her phone remained carefully angled throughout our conversation. The precise moment she'd excused herself to powder her nose. Exactly 3 minutes before Tyler texted about the emergency board meeting. Madison's message blinked on my screen. "Found something. Check your email. Don't open at work." I glanced around the empty conference room before clicking the link. Financial records, tax statements, property listings, all bearing the family name, all showing a pattern that made my stomach turn. Interesting reading? I slammed my laptop shut. Tyler stood in the doorway, his expression grim. The board meeting wasn't a coincidence, was it? 3 of our biggest clients received anonymous emails questioning our integrity. He dropped a folder on the table. All from different addresses, all mentioning you specifically. My hands shook as I read the emails. Each one referenced insider information that only someone with intimate knowledge of our operations would know. Information I'd mentioned during coffee with Brittany. They're trying to destroy everything I've built. The words tasted like acid. Tyler's hand found my shoulder. We traced the IP addresses, all from high-end hotels in Paris, where Brittany's been staying. I laughed, but it sounded more like breaking glass. Mother always said she had a talent for networking. My phone buzzed. Linda's number. I let it ring through to voicemail. Darling, I heard about the unfortunate situation at work. These things happen in business. Perhaps it's time to consider other opportunities? The family business could always use someone with your experience. The family business. The same one that, according to Madison's documents, was hemorrhaging money through a maze of shell companies and fraudulent investments. The same one that had mysteriously acquired several properties shortly after their original owners faced sudden financial ruin. They're not just trying to destroy me, I realized. They're trying to force me back under their control. Tyler studied the documents spread across the table. This goes deeper than family drama, Jasmine. This is corporate espionage. No. I stood up, pieces clicking into place. This is desperation. Look at these dates. I pointed to the property acquisitions. Each one corresponds to one of Brittany's successful ventures. They've been using the family business to launder money through her failed projects. My phone buzzed again. A text from Madison. Aunt Linda's asking questions about my access to company records. Be careful. The walls seemed to close in. Years of manipulation, of calculated cruelty, all leading to this moment. They'd let me build myself up just to tear me down, expecting me to crawl back, begging for help. We need to alert the authorities, Tyler suggested. Not yet. I gathered the documents, mind racing. They've covered their tracks too well. We need irrefutable proof. The reunion's in 2 weeks, he reminded me. They'll expect you to have broken by then. A plan formed, dark and dangerous as storm clouds. Then let's give them exactly what they expect. My phone lit up with another call. Brittany this time. I answered on speaker. Sis, I just heard about the board meeting. Are you okay? The concern in her voice was perfect, practiced. I thought of all the times she'd used that same tone while taking credit for my work, stealing my opportunities, destroying my chances. I don't know what to do, I whispered, letting my voice crack. Everything's falling apart. Oh, honey. The satisfaction beneath her sympathy was barely concealed. Come home. We'll figure this out together. Family first, right? Right. I agreed, catching Tyler's worried look. Family first. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and began typing my resignation letter. Sometimes the only way to dismantle a trap is to step into it willingly. Are you sure about this? Tyler asked. I thought of Gran's roses, of thorns that cut both ways. They want to play happy families? Fine. Let's see how well their facade holds up when the prodigal daughter returns. The setting sun cast long shadows across the conference room, turning everything blood red. Somewhere across the city, my family was celebrating their apparent victory, unaware that every move they'd made had only strengthened my resolve. Let them think they'd won. The best revenge, after all, is served at a family dinner. The family estate loomed before me, its windows gleaming like predatory eyes in the afternoon sun. I hadn't planned to return here until the reunion, but Robert's unexpected call had changed everything. Your mother's not home, he said, opening the door. 7 years had aged him 2 decades. We need to talk. The foyer still displayed the same carefully curated family photos. Brittany's achievements, Mother's social triumphs. Not a single image of me remained. Coffee? Robert's hands trembled as he poured. I saw your resignation letter. Linda was pleased. I'm sure she was. I watched him avoid my gaze. Why did you call me here? He placed a manila envelope on the kitchen counter, then stepped back as if it might explode. I found these in Brittany's old room. You should see them. Inside were documents, contracts, emails, bank statements. My fingers went numb as I read. The family business hadn't just been laundering money. They'd been systematically destroying their competitors, including my former company. How long have you known? Long enough to be complicit. Robert's voice cracked. Your mother and sister, they're planning something for the reunion. Something big. I can't stop them, but I thought... The front door clicked. Robert's face went white. Daddy? Brittany's voice rang through the house. Your car's still here. Did you forget about our lunch? She froze in the kitchen doorway. The perfect mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something ugly underneath. Jasmine. What a surprise. I was just leaving. I moved to gather the documents, but Brittany was faster. What's this? She snatched the envelope, scanning its contents. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into the paper. Daddy, you shouldn't share confidential business materials. They're not confidential if they're evidence of fraud, I said. Brittany's laugh could have cut glass. Evidence? These are just internal documents. Besides, who would believe you? The bitter older sister, jealous of her successful family. Brittany, please, Robert started, but she silenced him with a look. It's fine, Daddy. Jasmine's just confused. Aren't you, sis? All that stress from losing your job, it must be affecting your judgment. My phone buzzed. A text from Madison. Gran's in the hospital. Heart attack. Get here now. The room tilted. Brittany read the distress on my face and smiled. Problem? This isn't over. I managed, heading for the door. It never is with you. Brittany's voice followed me. Say hi to Gran for us. Such a shame about her fall. I spun around. Fall? The message said heart attack. Did it? My mistake. She examined her nails. Memory's been a bit fuzzy since I had lunch with her yesterday. The threat hung in the air like poison gas. Robert wouldn't meet my eyes. At the hospital, I found Tyler already there, pacing the waiting room. She's stable, he said before I could ask. But Madison found something in her system. Traces of digitalis. Foxglove. My nails cut into my palms. Brittany's favorite flower. She always kept them in her garden. There's more. Tyler lowered his voice. The board meeting tomorrow. They're voting to acquire Horizon Solutions. Hostile takeover. Your mother's company will absorb everything. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. My resignation, the client sabotage, Gran's accident. They weren't just trying to bring me back to the family, they were systematically dismantling every escape route I had. I can't prove any of it, can I? My voice sounded distant to my own ears. Not legally. Tyler hesitated. But Madison copied the documents before Brittany took them. We have enough to destroy their reputation, if not their freedom. Through the hospital window, I watched the sun set behind the city skyline. Somewhere out there, my sister was probably already reporting the stolen documents to the police. My father was likely drinking himself into familiar oblivion. And my mother. When does the board vote? I asked. 9 a.m. tomorrow. I thought of Gran lying in that hospital bed, of Robert's trembling hands, of all the years of calculated cruelty masked as family love. Then we have 12 hours to tear everything down. Jasmine. Tyler touched my arm. If we do this, there's no going back. I looked at my phone's wallpaper. The last photo taken of Gran and me together, both of us smiling, real smiles that reached our eyes. They crossed that line when they went after her. Now they'll learn what real family loyalty looks like. The night stretched ahead, dark with possibility and promise. Sometimes the only way to save what you love is to burn everything else to the ground. The hospital room's monitors beeped steadily as Gran slept. I'd spent the last 3 nights here, watching her vital signs while coordinating with Tyler and Madison. My laptop glowed with damning evidence. Forged signatures, fraudulent property transfers, offshore accounts. "You should rest," Tyler said, appearing with coffee. "The board meeting's in 6 hours." "Can't." I showed him the latest email from Linda, a family photo from the upcoming reunion's seating chart. They'd placed me next to Brittany, directly across from the kitchen doors. They're not even trying to be subtle anymore. My phone buzzed. Madison. "Found something in Aunt Linda's email. You need to see this now." The attached document made my blood freeze. A contract dated 3 days ago, selling Gran's house. Her signature looked perfect. Too perfect. The kind of perfect that came from years of practice forging art school rejection letters and withdrawal forms. "They're taking everything," I whispered. "Not just the company. They want to leave her with nothing." Tyler studied the contract. "We can stop this. The board members won't believe us without proof." I closed my laptop harder than necessary. "And Brittany has the original documents. Then we'll get them back." The determination in his voice made me look up. "Madison says your mother is hosting her weekly bridge club right now. The house will be empty except for the staff." The implications hung in the air like smoke. Breaking and entering, theft, criminal charges if we were caught. But Gran's monitors kept beeping, each sound a reminder of what they'd already done. "I can't ask you to risk." "You're not asking." Tyler grabbed his keys. "I'm telling." The drive to my childhood home felt surreal. Security cameras tracked our movement up the driveway, but Madison had already looped the footage. 3 minutes to get in, 5 to search, 2 to get out. "Remember," Tyler said as I picked the lock to Brittany's private office, a skill learned from years of retrieving stolen diaries and art supplies. "If anyone shows up?" "I know." The door clicked open. "Run." Brittany's office reeked of expensive perfume and artificial success. Awards lined the walls, half of them originally mine. The safe behind her favorite self-portrait yielded easily to our grandmother's birthday. "Found them," I said, pulling out the envelope Robert had shown me. But underneath lay something else. Medical records. Gran's medical records dated months before her accident. "Jasmine." Tyler's voice carried a warning. "Someone's coming." Footsteps echoed down the hall. I shoved everything into my bag, but as we turned to leave, Brittany's laptop caught my eye. Password protected, but I knew my sister. She'd always used the same one, the date she'd won her first art competition. With my painting. "We need to go," Tyler insisted. "1 minute." My fingers flew across the keyboard. Access granted. Files copied. Time running out. The footsteps grew closer. Tyler grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the window. We made it to the car just as voices filled the office above. My heart pounded as Tyler drove us away, the stolen documents burning a hole in my bag. Back at the hospital, Madison was waiting. "Mom's asking questions," she said. "She knows something's happening." I spread the documents across Gran's bedside table. Medical reports showing deliberate medication changes. Property transfers dated before the accidents. Emails discussing contingency plans if I didn't cooperate. "They've been planning this for months," Madison whispered, horror creeping into her voice. "The reunion, the company takeover, Gran's condition, it's all connected. Not for long." I pulled up Brittany's copied files. "The board meeting starts in 2 hours. By then, every member will have copies of these documents. Anonymous source, of course." "They'll come after you," Tyler warned. "Your mother won't let this go." "Good." I took Gran's hand, feeling her weak pulse against my fingers. "Because I'm counting on it." The sunrise painted the hospital room in shades of red and gold. In a few hours, my family's carefully constructed empire would begin to crumble. They'd taught me well. About power, about manipulation, about revenge. Now it was time to show them exactly how well I'd learned those lessons. "Madison, send the files." I watched the morning light creep across Gran's peaceful face. It's time to give them a family reunion they'll never forget. The family reunion buzzed with artificial cheer and expensive champagne. I watched from my assigned seat as Linda worked the room, her designer dress catching the light like scales on a snake. Brittany held court near the French doors, surrounded by admirers who had no idea she'd nearly killed our grandmother. "You're looking well," Robert said, hovering by my chair. The board meeting's aftermath had aged him another decade. "Your mother was worried you wouldn't come. Was she?" I sipped my water, noting how Brittany's eyes kept darting to my plate. "Or was she worried I would?" Madison's text vibrated against my hip. USB drive planted in Linda's study, security footage looping. The catering staff emerged from the kitchen, carrying plates of Linda's famous seafood risotto. My special plate arrived last, garnished with fresh parsley, just like the dish that had sent me to the hospital at 16. "Still allergic to shellfish?" Brittany asked sweetly. "Don't worry, I made sure they knew." I bet she did, just like she'd made sure about Gran's medication. Linda clinked her glass, commanding attention. "Before we eat, I'd like to thank everyone for coming to celebrate our family's reunion." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Especially Jasmine, who's finally come home after her unfortunate professional setback. The room temperature seemed to drop. Several guests shifted uncomfortably, aware of the hostile takeover that had made headlines. "Actually," I stood, my chair scraping against hardwood, "I'd like to say something." "Darling," Linda's warning tone could have frozen hell. "Perhaps after dinner?" "No, now is perfect." I pulled out my phone, connecting to the house's wireless speakers, another of Madison's tricks. "I've prepared a presentation." The first image appeared on the dining room's projection screen, Gran's medical records, then the forged documents, the offshore accounts, each slide accompanied by gasps and murmurs from the assembled guests. "What is this?" Linda's voice shook with barely controlled rage. "The truth." I moved away from my plate as Brittany's hand twitched toward it. "About the family business, about Gran's accident, about everything." "You ungrateful." Brittany lunged forward, but Robert caught her arm. "Security footage, too," I continued, watching color drain from Linda's face. "Very thorough security system you have. Records everything. Even conversations about poison and property theft." The room erupted in chaos. Linda's society friends backed away, phones already spreading the scandal. Robert slumped in his chair while Brittany's perfect mask cracked completely. Then I felt it. The first hint of throat constriction, the familiar tingle on my tongue. They'd gotten to my water glass. Tyler moved toward me, but Linda blocked his path. "Jasmine, you're clearly unwell. Perhaps you should lie down." My vision blurred. The EpiPen in my purse seemed miles away. Madison's horrified face swam at the edge of my consciousness. "You see?" Linda addressed the room, her voice dripping concern. "The stress of losing her position has affected her judgment. These accusations are clearly recorded." Tyler's voice cut through my growing dizziness. He held up his phone, still filming. "All of it, including whatever you just did to her drink." I stumbled, catching myself on the table. The room tilted dangerously. "Nobody leaves," Tyler commanded as guests tried to flee. "Police are already on their way." Through darkening vision, I saw Brittany's smirk fade. Linda's mask of concern cracked. Robert finally stood up straight. "Daddy," Brittany pleaded, "do something." But Robert walked past her, past Linda, to where I was fighting for breath. "The EpiPen," he said, reaching for my purse. "Where?" The world went sideways. Voices blurred together. Someone screamed. Maybe Madison, maybe me. The last thing I saw was Linda's face, twisted with a hatred that had always been there, just better hidden. Then darkness took me, and I couldn't help wondering if this was what winning felt like. This cold, empty feeling as consciousness slipped away. If revenge was worth dying for. The answer whispered through my fading thoughts. Not dying. Surviving. Because that's what I'd always done. What they'd taught me to do without meaning to. Survive. Fight. Win. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. The game wasn't over yet. Hospital fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as consciousness returned. Tyler's face swam into focus, then Madison's. Behind them, police officers interviewed shocked party guests, while crime scene technicians photographed my water glass. "She's awake," Madison called, and a doctor hurried over to check my vitals. "You're lucky," she said. "The EpiPen and quick response time saved your life." Through the emergency room's glass doors, I watched Linda being handcuffed, her designer dress clashing with steel bracelets. Brittany sat nearby, mascara streaking her perfect makeup as she spoke to detectives. "The video's gone viral," Tyler said, showing me his phone. The footage showed everything. My presentation, the poisoning attempt, Linda's mask finally slipping. "Your mother's society friends are already distancing themselves." "Where's Robert?" My voice was raw from intubation, giving his statement. Madison squeezed my hand. "He's telling them everything. About Gran, about the company, about years of covering up their schemes." A commotion erupted outside. Brittany had broken free from the officers, bursting into my room. "You ruined everything." Her face contorted with rage. "We were protecting you, you ungrateful—" "Protecting me?" The heart monitor's beeping accelerated. By poisoning me? By trying to kill Gran? She was going to tell everyone about Mother's past, about what really happened to... Brittany caught herself, but too late. To whom? The room went deadly quiet. "Your Aunt Catherine." Robert's voice came from the doorway. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, but somehow stronger. "Your mother's sister, the one you were told died in an accident 25 years ago." Linda appeared behind him, flanked by officers. "Robert, don't," but he continued, words spilling out like blood from an old wound. Catherine threatened to expose Linda's first marriage, her criminal record. There was an argument, pills in her drink. He met my eyes. Just like tonight. "Mother?" Brittany's voice shrank to a whisper. Linda's mask cracked completely. "I did what I had to do. For this family, for our reputation. Catherine was weak, just like... Like me?" I finished. "Is that why you tried so hard to control me? Because I reminded you of her? You were supposed to be perfect." Linda lunged forward, officers barely restraining her. "Like Brittany, but you fought everything, every lesson, every opportunity. Just like Catherine, always questioning, always threatening to ruin everything I built. The difference is..." I sat up straighter, ignoring the pain. "I survived. And I recorded everything you just said." Madison held up her phone, still recording. Linda's face went ash white. "You taught me well, Mother. About power, about manipulation, about family loyalty." I nodded to the officers. "About consequences." As they led Linda away, Brittany collapsed into a chair, her world visibly crumbling. "I didn't know," she whispered. "About Catherine, about any of it." "But you knew about Gran," I said. "About the company fraud, about trying to destroy me." "Because you were leaving us." Her perfect mask finally shattered, revealing something broken underneath. "Everyone leaves." Robert stepped forward, placing a hand on Brittany's shoulder. "Not everyone, but we have to earn the right to keep people in our lives." He turned to me. Something I learned too late. The sun was rising outside my hospital window, painting the sky in shades of redemption. Madison showed me another message. Gran was awake, asking for me. Tyler hadn't left my side, his quiet strength a reminder that family isn't always about blood. "What happens now?" Brittany asked, small and lost without her role to play. I thought about revenge, about justice, about the fine line between healing and destroying. Now we learn who we are without her scripts to follow. The morning light stretched across the hospital room, touching each face. Madison's loyalty, Tyler's devotion, Robert's regret, Brittany's uncertainty. All of us forever changed by the truth we'd uncovered. Sometimes family isn't what you're born into, but what you build from the ashes of what burns down. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction, but reconstruction, creating something stronger from the broken pieces. The police had more questions. The media wanted statements. The future loomed, uncertain but free. For the first time in my life, I was ready to face it all. Not as the person they'd tried to make me, but as the person I'd become despite them. Or perhaps because of them. Gran's garden bloomed with autumn roses as I helped her prune the dying branches. The morning paper lay folded on her patio table, its headlines still visible. Business empire crumbles. Linda Mitchell faces criminal charges. "You haven't visited Brittany," Gran said, her pruning shears snipping with surgical precision. "She made her choice." I gathered fallen petals, remembering my sister's face at the sentencing. She'd looked lost, stripped of her designer armor and practiced smiles. "The rehab facility has a good program." "And Robert?" The roses felt velvet soft against my fingers. "He's cooperating with the investigation. Trying to make amends, I suppose?" Gran set down her shears, studying me with eyes that had seen through Linda's facade decades ago. "There's something I need to show you." Inside, she unlocked a drawer I'd never noticed before, removing a leather-bound journal. "Your Aunt Catherine's diary. I've kept it all these years, waiting for the right moment." My hands trembled as I opened it. Catherine's words flowed across the pages, describing Linda's early manipulations, her growing fears, her final desperate attempts to protect her family from her sister's poison. "She knew," I whispered. "About everything. About what Linda was capable of, just as I knew what you were capable of." Gran's voice held a mix of pride and sadness. "Why do you think I encouraged your independence? Your art? Everything Linda tried to suppress?" The diary's last entry was dated the day before Catherine's accident. Its final words struck like lightning. "If anything happens to me, protect Jasmine. She has her father's heart and my spirit, too strong to break, too honest to corrupt." My phone buzzed. Tyler, checking if we were still on for dinner. Next to his message was a text from Madison about the graphic design business we were starting together, and another from Robert asking to meet. "I always wondered," I said, closing the diary, "why you didn't stop her sooner. Why you let Linda, for the same reason you orchestrated her downfall the way you did." Gran touched the diary gently. "Some people have to expose themselves before others will believe the truth about them." Through the window, I watched a butterfly land on one of Gran's roses, its wings catching sunlight like stained glass. "Catherine tried to fight her directly. That's why she lost. And you learned to fight smarter." Gran smiled. "To build something stronger than Linda's walls of lies. Look at what you've created. Real friendships, honest success, true family." The doorbell rang. Madison arriving early with paint samples for our new office. Beyond her, I could see Tyler parking his car, carrying the takeout we'd promised Gran for dinner. "I thought revenge would feel different," I admitted. "More satisfying, maybe. Instead, it feels like freedom." Gran squeezed my hand. "Catherine would be proud. Not of the revenge, but of what you've built from the ashes." The diary sat between us, its secrets finally laid bare. Outside, Madison and Tyler's laughter mingled with the garden's peace. My phone showed another missed call from Brittany, the third this week. "Sometimes," Gran said, following my gaze to the phone, "the hardest part isn't tearing down the old walls. It's deciding which new bridges to build." I thought of Brittany in rehab, fighting her own battles, of Robert's halting attempts at redemption, of Linda, facing the consequences of her choices in a cell that was, perhaps, no smaller than the prison she'd built for herself long ago. The butterfly took flight, rising above Gran's garden wall. Below it, new roses were already budding where we'd pruned the dead branches, reaching for light in their own way, at their own pace. I picked up my phone, Catherine's diary close at hand. Some calls shouldn't go unanswered forever. Some stories need new endings, even if they're harder to write than the ones we first imagined. After all, the strongest gardens grow in turned soil, And the deepest healing often begins when we least expect it, in the spaces between revenge and forgiveness, between justice and mercy, between the family we're born with and the one we choose to build.
The shrill ring of my phone pierced the quiet of our bedroom. I fumbled for it, my heart racing as I saw the clinic's number flash across the screen. This was it, the moment we'd been waiting for. "Hello?" I answered, my voice trembling. "Mrs. Nora Thompson? This is Dr. Patel's office." I gripped the phone tighter, willing the nurse to continue. "Yes, this is she. I'm sorry, but your pregnancy test came back negative." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Another failure, another month of disappointment. I mumbled a thank you and hung up, tears already streaming down my face. "Jackson?" I called out, desperate for my husband's comfort, but the house remained silent. Where was he? I dragged myself out of bed, padding down the hallway to his home office. The door was ajar, and I could hear his muffled voice. He was on the phone, speaking in hushed tones. "I can't wait to see you either, babe," he said, his voice warm and affectionate in a way I hadn't heard in months. "I'll make an excuse and be there in an hour." My blood ran cold. I pushed the door open, revealing Jackson lounging in his chair, a guilty expression spreading across his face as he saw me. "Who were you talking to?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. Jackson fumbled with his phone, trying to hide the screen. "No one, honey, just a work call." "Don't lie to me," I spat, anger rising to replace the numbness. "I heard you. Who's babe?" His shoulders sagged, and he had the decency to look ashamed. "Nora, I'm sorry, I didn't want you to find out like this." "Find out what?" I asked, even though I already knew the answer. "I've been seeing someone else," he admitted, unable to meet my eyes. "Her name's Melissa. She's pregnant." The words hit me like a physical blow. I staggered back, gripping the doorframe for support. "Pregnant? But we've been trying for years. How?" Jackson stood, reaching out to me, but I flinched away from his touch. "I'm so sorry, Nora. I should have told you sooner. The truth is, I'm not infertile. It's you. It's always been you." I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air that wouldn't come. "What are you saying?" "I've known for a while that I could have children," he said, his voice cold and detached. I couldn't have them with you." The room spun around me as the full weight of his betrayal sank in. Years of treatments, of hope and heartbreak, all for nothing. And now this final, cruel twist of the knife. "Get out," I whispered, my voice shaking with rage. "Nora, please, let's talk about this," Jackson pleaded, but I was beyond reason. "Get out!" I screamed, grabbing the nearest object, a framed photo of our wedding day, and hurling it at him. It shattered against the wall, a fitting metaphor for our marriage. Jackson ducked, hands raised in surrender. Okay, I'm going. But we need to discuss this eventually. I want a divorce, Nora, a clean break." I watched in stunned silence as he grabbed his keys and wallet, heading for the door. Just before he left, he turned back to me, his expression a mix of guilt and relief. "I really am sorry," he said softly. "I hope someday you can forgive me." The door closed behind him with a final click, leaving me alone in the wreckage of my life. I sank to the floor, surrounded by the shards of our broken dreams, and let out a primal scream of anguish. How had it come to this? 10 years of marriage, of building a life together, all destroyed in a matter of minutes. As the tears flowed freely, I realized with startling clarity that this was only the beginning. Jackson wanted a divorce, and knowing him, it would be anything but clean. I pulled myself to my feet, wiping away my tears with trembling hands. If he wanted a fight, I'd give him one. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The library's familiar scent of old books and lemon-scented cleaner greeted me as I pushed through the heavy wooden doors. It had been 6 months since Jackson walked out, leaving me to pick up the pieces of our shattered life. The divorce was final now, a bitter process that had drained me emotionally and financially. But here, surrounded by stories of adventure and romance, I could almost forget the pain. Nora, Margaret, the head librarian, waved me over to the circulation desk, her kind face creased with concern. "How are you holding up, dear?" I managed a weak smile. "One day at a time, Margaret. Thanks for asking." She patted my hand. "Listen, I've been meaning to talk to you about something. Do you have a moment?" My stomach clenched. Was she going to cut my hours? I couldn't afford to lose this job, not now. "Of course," I said, trying to keep the worry from my voice. Margaret led me to her tiny office, gesturing for me to take a seat. Nora, you've been such a wonderful addition to our team these past few months. Your work ethic, your rapport with the patrons, it's been a joy to watch you blossom here. I relaxed slightly, hope flickering in my chest. Thank you, Margaret. That means a lot. She leaned forward, her eyes twinkling. Well, I have some news. Mrs. Jameson is retiring next month, and we'll need someone to take over her full-time position. I'd like to offer it to you. For a moment, I couldn't speak. A full-time job with benefits? It was more than I dared to hope for. Oh, Margaret, I breathed. I don't know what to say. Say yes, she urged, grinning. We need you here, Nora, and I think you need us too. Tears pricked at my eyes as I nodded. Yes, I'd love to accept. As I left Margaret's office, my phone buzzed. A text from Jackson. My good mood evaporated instantly. Need to talk. Meet me at Joe's Diner at 7. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. What could he possibly want now? We'd said everything there was to say during the divorce, but curiosity got the better of me. Fine, I texted back. But make it quick. The rest of my shift passed in a blur of shelving books and helping patrons, my mind racing with possibilities. By the time I pushed open the diner's door, my nerves were frayed. Jackson was already there, nursing a cup of coffee. He looked different. Haggard, almost. The smug confidence that had always irritated me was gone, replaced by something I couldn't quite place. Nora, he said, standing as I approached. Thanks for coming. I slid into the booth across from him, keeping my expression neutral. What do you want, Jackson? He took a deep breath, his fingers drumming nervously on the table. I need your help. I barked out a laugh. You've got to be kidding me. After everything you've put me through, you have the audacity to ask for my help. Please, just hear me out, he pleaded. It's Melissa. She's gone. That stopped me cold. What do you mean, gone? Jackson's face crumpled. She left, took all her things and disappeared. She's not answering her phone. Her family hasn't heard from her. I'm worried, Nora. She's 7 months pregnant with my child. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Part of me wanted to laugh in his face, to tell him this was karma for what he'd done to me. But the fear in his eyes was real. Why come to me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Because you're the most resourceful person I know, he said. And because I trust you. Despite everything, I know you're a good person, Nora. Will you help me find her? I stared at him, my mind reeling. This was my chance for revenge, to watch him suffer as I had. But could I live with myself if something happened to Melissa or the baby? I'll think about it, I said finally, standing up. That's all I can promise for now. As I walked out of the diner, my phone buzzed again, a number I didn't recognize. I answered, my heart pounding. Hello? A woman's voice, trembling and scared. Is this Nora? It's Melissa. I need your help. I stared at my phone in disbelief, Melissa's desperate voice still ringing in my ears. My mind raced, torn between helping the woman who'd stolen my husband and hanging up out of spite. Melissa, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. What's going on? Are you okay? Her sobs crackled through the line. No, I'm not. I think Jackson might hurt me, or the baby. I don't know what to do. My blood ran cold. Jackson, capable of hurting a pregnant woman? It seemed impossible, and yet, where are you? I asked, already heading to my car. A motel just outside of town. The Pinewood, room 12. Please, Nora, I know I have no right to ask, but I'm on my way, I interrupted, surprising myself. Stay put and lock the door. I'll be there in 20 minutes. As I drove, my thoughts whirled. What had Jackson done to terrify Melissa so much? And why come to me, of all people? The Pinewood Motel was a seedy affair, paint peeling and neon sign flickering weakly in the twilight. I knocked on room 12, heart pounding. Melissa opened the door, her face tear-stained and swollen. Her pregnant belly seemed impossibly large, a stark reminder of everything I'd lost. Thank you for coming, she whispered, ushering me inside. I perched awkwardly on the edge of the bed, watching as Melissa paced the small room. Tell me what happened, I said gently. She took a shuddering breath. Jackson? He's not who I thought he was. At first he was so kind, so attentive, but lately he's become controlling, paranoid. He accuses me of cheating, says the baby isn't his. Last night She trailed off, her hand unconsciously moving to her arm. I noticed the bruises then, peeking out from under her sleeve. Anger flared in my chest. Did he hurt you? Melissa nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm scared, Nora. I don't know what he'll do next. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. Jackson's name flashed on the screen. I showed it to Melissa, whose eyes widened in fear. "Don't answer," she pleaded. I hesitated, then declined the call. "We need to get you somewhere safe," I said, standing up. "Pack your things. You can stay with me tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure out a more permanent solution." As Melissa gathered her belongings, my phone rang again. This time, it was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello?" I answered cautiously. "Nora, it's Marianne. I need your help." My heart stopped. "Marianne? My best friend, Marianne." "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice shaking. "This isn't funny." "Nora, please," the voice insisted. "I know this sounds crazy, but it's me. There's been an accident. Tom and we didn't make it. But Ethan, our son, he's alive. He needs you." The room spun around me. This couldn't be happening. Marianne and Tom had left for a weekend getaway just yesterday, leaving their 5-year-old son with a babysitter. "I don't understand," I whispered, sinking back onto the bed. "There's no time to explain." Marianne's voice urged. "Please, Nora, go to our house. Take care of Ethan. You're the only one I trust." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my mind reeling. "Nora?" Melissa's concerned voice broke through my shock. "What's wrong?" I looked up at her, this woman who'd been my rival now seeking my protection. And somewhere across town, my best friend's child might be alone and scared. "We have to go," I said, standing on shaky legs. "Now." As we hurried to my car, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure in the parking lot. Jackson, his face twisted with rage, spotted us and started running. "Get in!" I yelled to Melissa, fumbling with my keys. We peeled out of the lot just as Jackson reached us, his fists pounding on the window. In the rearview mirror, I saw him sprint to his own car. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. Melissa whimpered beside me, one hand protectively cradling her belly. "Where are we going?" she asked, fear evident in her voice. I took a deep breath, my mind made up. To save a little boy. As we sped through the night, Jackson's headlights looming in the mirror, I realized my life had irrevocably changed. In one night, I'd become protector to my husband's mistress and guardian to my best friend's orphaned child. Whatever came next, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The first few weeks with Ethan were a blur of sleepless nights, tear-stained cheeks, and awkward silences. At 5 years old, he was old enough to understand that his parents weren't coming back, but too young to fully grasp the permanence of death. His grief manifested in tantrums and nightmares that left us both exhausted. One particularly rough morning, I found Ethan huddled in his closet, clutching a photo of Marianne and Tom. "Ethan, sweetheart," I called softly, crouching down to his level. "What are you doing in there?" His big brown eyes, so like Marianne's, met mine. "I want my mommy," he whispered, his lower lip trembling. My heart shattered. "I know, sweetie. I miss her, too." I held out my arms, and after a moment's hesitation, he crawled into them. I held him close, rocking gently as he sobbed against my shoulder. "Why did they leave me?" He hiccuped between tears. I swallowed hard, fighting back my own grief. "They didn't want to, Ethan. They loved you so much. Sometimes bad things happen, and we can't control them. But I promise you, your mommy and daddy would be so proud of how brave you're being." He pulled back, wiping his nose on his sleeve. "Really?" I nodded, managing a small smile. "Really. And you know what? They asked me to take care of you because they knew how much I love you too." Ethan's brow furrowed. "But you're not my real mom." The words stung, but I pushed past the pain. "You're right, I'm not. But I promise to love you and take care of you, just like your mom would want. We're family now, you and me. Is that okay?" He considered this for a long moment, then nodded solemnly. "Okay. Can we have pancakes for breakfast?" I laughed, relief washing over me. "Absolutely. Let's go make a mess in the kitchen." As the weeks turned into months, Ethan and I settled into a routine. School drop-offs, bedtime stories, weekend trips to the park. Slowly but surely, we were building a life together. It wasn't always easy, but every small victory felt monumental. One evening, as I tucked Ethan into bed, he asked the question I'd been dreading. "Nora, why don't you have any kids of your own?" I froze, caught off guard by the innocent inquiry. "Well," I began, choosing my words carefully, "sometimes it's not that easy for grown-ups to have babies. I wanted to very much, but it just didn't happen for me." Ethan's face scrunched up in thought. "Is that why you took me? Because you couldn't have your own baby?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. "No, sweetie," I said firmly, sitting on the edge of his bed. "I took you in because I love you and because your mom was my best friend. You're not a replacement for anything. You're you, and that's exactly who I want you to be." He nodded, seemingly satisfied. Then in a small voice he asked, "Can I call you Mom?" Tears sprang to my eyes. "Oh, Ethan, if that's what you want, I'd be honored." He smiled, reaching up to wipe away a tear that had escaped down my cheek. "Don't cry, Mom. I love you too." As I left his room that night, my heart full to bursting, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Jackson. "We need to talk. It's about Ethan." My blood ran cold. What could Jackson possibly want with Ethan? He'd never shown any interest in children before, unless... A horrible thought struck me. What if Jackson was Ethan's biological father? What if all those years of trying to conceive, he'd been unfaithful not just with Melissa, but with Marianne too? I sank to the floor, my back against Ethan's door, as the implications washed over me. If it was true, Jackson tried to take Ethan away. The life we'd built, the family we'd become, it could all be ripped away in an instant. I looked at my phone, Jackson's message still glowing on the screen. Whatever he wanted, whatever secrets were about to be revealed, I knew one thing for certain. I would fight with everything I had to keep Ethan safe and by my side. With trembling fingers, I typed out a response. "Tomorrow, noon, the park, and Jackson, if you try anything, I swear I'll make you regret it." I hit send, steeling myself for the battle ahead. For Ethan, I'd face any storm, even if it meant confronting the ghosts of my past and the man who'd shattered my world. The supermarket's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I navigated the crowded aisles, Ethan chattered excitedly beside me. At 8 years old now, he was a bundle of energy and curiosity, always eager to help with the shopping. "Can we get Lucky Charms, Mom? Please?" He tugged at my sleeve, eyes wide and pleading. I laughed, ruffling his hair. "Nice try, buddy. How about we compromise with some Cheerios?" As we turned the corner into the cereal aisle, I froze. There, examining a box of bran flakes, was Jackson. My heart raced, and I instinctively pulled Ethan closer. "Mom?" Ethan looked up at me, confusion etched on his face. "What's wrong?" Before I could respond, Jackson turned. His eyes widened in recognition, then narrowed as they settled on Ethan. "Well, well," he drawled, a smirk playing at his lips. "If it isn't my ex-wife and her, what should I call him? Rental kid?" Anger flared in my chest. "Jackson," I hissed, "don't you dare. What? State the obvious?" He stepped closer, his gaze cruel. "How pathetic, Nora. Couldn't have a baby of your own, so you had to borrow someone else's." Ethan's grip on my hand tightened. "Don't talk to my mom like that," he shouted, his young voice ringing through the aisle. Jackson's eyebrows shot up. "Mom? Oh, that's rich. Tell me, kid, does she tuck you in at night and pretend she's your real mother? Does she—" "Shut up," I snapped, my voice trembling with rage. "You have no right to speak to us like this. Come on, Ethan, we're leaving." As I turned to go, Jackson grabbed my arm. "Not so fast. We have unfinished business, you and I." Ethan reacted instantly, kicking Jackson hard in the shin. "Let go of her." Jackson yelped in pain, releasing me, his face contorted with fury. "You little brat!" I stepped between them, my protective instincts in overdrive. "Touch him, and I swear I'll make you regret it." A small crowd had gathered, murmuring and staring. Jackson glanced around, seeming to realize he was making a scene. He straightened, smoothing his shirt. "This isn't over, Nora," he said, his voice low and menacing. "You can't play happy families forever. Sooner or later, the truth always comes out." With that, he stalked away, leaving me shaken and confused. What truth was he talking about? Ethan tugged at my hand. "Mom, can we go home now?" I nodded, abandoning our half-filled cart. As we walked to the car, Ethan's small voice broke the silence. "I'm sorry I kicked that man, Mom, but he was being mean to you." I knelt down, pulling him into a tight hug. "Oh, sweetheart, you have nothing to be sorry for. You were so brave." "Who was he?" Ethan asked, his face buried in my shoulder. I took a deep breath. That was my ex-husband, the man I was married to before." Ethan pulled back, his brow furrowed. "He's not very nice." "No," I agreed. "He's not, but you know what? We don't need him. We have each other, and that's what matters." As we drove home, my mind raced. Jackson's words echoed in my head. What did he mean about the truth coming out? And why now, after all this time? That night, after tucking Ethan in, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. I knew I should call my lawyer, maybe even the police. Jackson's behavior had been threatening, and I needed to protect Ethan. But something held me back, a nagging feeling that there was more to this story than I knew. What if Jackson really did have information about Ethan? What if he could take him away? My finger hovered over Jackson's number. One call could give me answers, but it could also open a Pandora's box of trouble. Was I ready to face whatever truths might come to light? The clock ticked loudly in the quiet house. Ethan's soft snores drifted from his room. This was our life now, our family. I'd do anything to protect it. With a deep breath, I made my decision. I pressed the call button, my heart pounding as the phone began to ring. Whatever Jackson had to say, whatever storm was coming our way, I'd face it head on. For Ethan, for our family, for the life we'd built together. As the ringing continued, I steeled myself for the battle ahead. No matter what, I wouldn't let anyone tear us apart. Not Jackson, not the past, not even the truth itself. The cafe bustled with mid-morning activity, but I barely noticed the chatter around me. My eyes were fixed on the door, my heart racing as I waited for Jackson to arrive. Ethan was safely at school, unaware of this clandestine meeting that could change everything. The bell above the door chimed, and there he was. Jackson, looking as smug and self-assured as ever. He slid into the seat across from me, a manila envelope in his hand. "Nora," he said, his voice dripping with false warmth. "So good of you to meet me." I cut straight to the chase. "What do you want, Jackson? What's this truth you were talking about?" He smirked, tapping the envelope. Always so impatient, but I suppose there's no point in dragging this out. He slid the envelope across the table. "Open it." With trembling hands I did. Inside were medical records. Jackson's medical records. My eyes widened as I scanned the documents, disbelief washing over me. "You're infertile?" I whispered, looking up at him in shock. Jackson nodded, his smug expression faltering for a moment. "Have been since before we were married. All those years of trying, all those treatments. It was never going to work, Nora. It was always you." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Anger, hurt, and confusion warred within me. "Why?" I choked out. "Why put me through all of that if you knew?" He shrugged, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. I thought maybe the doctors were wrong, and then, when I realized they weren't, I was a coward. It was easier to let you think it was your fault. I felt sick. All those years of self-doubt, of feeling broken and inadequate, all because of his lie. "You bastard," I hissed. "Do you have any idea what you put me through?" "I'm sorry," he said, and for once he sounded sincere. "I know it doesn't make up for anything, but I am sorry." I shook my head, fighting back tears. "Why tell me now, after all this time?" Jackson's expression hardened. "Because of Ethan. I've been doing some digging, Nora. I know he's not really Marianne's son." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" He leaned forward, his voice low. "I found adoption papers. Marianne and Tom adopted Ethan as a newborn. And here's the kicker. His birth mother? She looks an awful lot like you." The room spun around me. It couldn't be true. And yet, a long-buried memory surfaced. A drunken night with Tom years ago, before he and Marianne were married. We'd sworn never to speak of it, to pretend it never happened. "No," I whispered, more to myself than to Jackson. "It's not possible, isn't it?" Jackson pressed. "Think about it, Nora. The timing fits. And haven't you ever wondered why you felt such an instant connection to him?" Tears streamed down my face as the implications hit me. If it was true, if Ethan was really my son... "What do you want?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Jackson's expression softened slightly. "I want you to know the truth. About me, about Ethan. And I want a chance to make things right." I stared at him, incredulous. "Make things right? How could you possibly?" "I can help you," he interrupted. "If Ethan is your biological son, you have rights. We could fight for custody together." The offer hung in the air between us, tempting and terrifying all at once. Part of me wanted to scream at Jackson, to throw the envelope in his face and storm out, but another part, the part that had always longed for a child of my own, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was my chance. "I need time," I said finally, gathering the documents with shaking hands. "I need to process all of this." Jackson nodded, standing up. "Take all the time you need. But Nora, don't wait too long. Ethan deserves to know the truth about where he came from." As he walked away, I sat frozen, the weight of his revelations crushing me. My whole world had just been turned upside down. Ethan, my sweet, brave Ethan, could be my flesh and blood. The child I'd always longed for had been right in front of me all along. But claiming him as my own would mean destroying the life we'd built together. It would mean shattering his memories of Marianne and Tom, the parents he'd loved and lost. Could I do that to him? Could I be that selfish? As I left the cafe, my mind reeling, I knew I faced the most impossible decision of my life. The truth was out there now, waiting to be acknowledged. And whatever choice I made, nothing would ever be the same again. The university campus buzzed with excitement as proud families gathered for graduation day. I stood at the edge of the crowd, my heart swelling with pride as I watched Ethan, now a handsome young man of 22, adjusting his cap and gown. "Mom," he called, waving me over. "Can you believe it? I'm finally done." I hugged him tightly, blinking back tears. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Your parents would be too." A shadow crossed his face at the mention of Marianne and Tom, but he quickly smiled again. "I know, and I'm grateful for you, Mom, for everything." As we made our way towards the auditorium, a familiar voice stopped us cold. Well, if it isn't the happy family." I turned to see Jackson standing there, looking older but still as smug as ever. Ethan tensed beside me. "What are you doing here?" I hissed, stepping protectively in front of Ethan. Jackson smirked. "Can't a man congratulate his stepson on his big day?" Ethan's eyes widened in confusion. "Stepson? What are you talking about?" My heart raced. I'd never told Ethan the truth about his parentage, always planning to wait for the right moment. But now, Jackson was threatening to ruin everything. "It's nothing, Ethan," I said quickly. "Let's go inside." But Jackson wasn't done. "Oh, come now, Nora, don't you think it's time he knew about his real mother?" Ethan looked between us, his face a mix of confusion and growing anger. "Mom, what's going on?" I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. How could I explain years of secrets and lies in this moment? "Your mother here has been keeping quite the secret," Jackson continued, his voice dripping with false concern. "You see, Ethan, Marianne and Tom weren't your real parents. They adopted you, and your birth mother, well, she's standing right next to you." The world seemed to stop. Ethan stumbled back, his face pale with shock. "What? Mom, is this true?" Tears streamed down my face as I nodded. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you, but How long have you known?" he demanded, his voice shaking. I only found out recently," I stammered. "I was trying to find the right time to what?" Ethan interrupted, his voice rising. "To tell me my whole life has been a lie? That the woman I've called Mom for years is actually my birth mother?" Jackson watched our exchange with barely concealed glee. "Oh, it gets better. Tell him about Tom, Nora. Tell him how you—" "Enough!" A commanding voice cut through the tension. We all turned to see Arthur Callahan, CEO of a major tech company and an old friend of Marianne's family, striding towards us. "This is neither the time nor the place for such revelations," Arthur said firmly. He turned to Ethan, his expression softening. "Young man, I knew your parents, all of them, and I can assure you the love they had for you was real, regardless of biology." Ethan's shoulders sagged, the fight seeming to drain out of him. I don't know what to believe anymore." Arthur placed a comforting hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Believe in your own accomplishments. This is your day, Ethan. Don't let anyone take that away from you." He glanced at Jackson. "And as for you, I think it's time you left." Jackson opened his mouth to protest, but something in Arthur's steely gaze made him think better of it. With a final sneer in my direction, he slunk away. As the crowd around us began to disperse, Arthur turned to Ethan. "I have a proposition for you. My company is always looking for bright young minds. How would you like to join us as a junior executive?" Ethan blinked, momentarily distracted from the emotional turmoil. Really? But you don't even know my qualifications." Arthur smiled. "I know enough. What do you say?" As Ethan and Arthur discussed the details, I stood to the side, my mind reeling. In the span of minutes, everything had changed. The truth was out, for better or worse, and I had no idea where we'd go from here. The ceremony was about to begin, and Ethan turned to me, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "After all this is over." I nodded, my heart heavy. "Of course, whatever you need." As we made our way into the auditorium, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was a turning point. Our relationship, our family, hung in the balance. and I had no idea if we'd be able to rise from the ashes of these revelations or if everything we'd built would crumble to dust. The tension in the air was palpable as Ethan and I stood face to face in our living room. His graduation gown lay discarded on the couch, a stark reminder of how quickly joy had turned to anguish. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ethan's voice was raw with emotion. "All these years, you knew you were my real mother?" I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "No, sweetheart. I only found out recently. I was trying to find the right way to tell you." "And Tom? Was he really my father?" I took a deep breath. "Yes, it was a mistake. One night before he and Marianne were married. We never spoke of it again." Ethan paced the room, running his hands through his hair. "So my whole life has been a lie? Marianne and Tom weren't even my real parents?" "No," I said fiercely. "They loved you more than anything in this world. Biology doesn't change that." Before Ethan could respond, a loud banging on the door made us both jump. Jackson's voice boomed from the other side. "Open up! We're not done here!" Fear gripped my heart. "Ethan, call the police," I whispered. But it was too late. The door burst open, revealing Jackson, his eyes wild with anger and something else, desperation. "You think you can just cut me out?" he snarled, advancing towards us. "I'm the one who uncovered the truth. I deserve to be part of this family." Ethan stepped in front of me protectively. "You're not family. You're nothing but a bitter, jealous man who couldn't handle the truth about himself." Jackson's face contorted with rage. He lunged forward, grabbing Ethan by the shirt. "You ungrateful little—" Suddenly, Arthur appeared in the doorway, his imposing figure filling the frame. "That's enough, Jackson. Let him go." Jackson released Ethan, turning his fury on Arthur. This is all your fault, swooping in like some white knight." "The only person at fault here is you," Arthur said calmly. "Now I suggest you leave before the police arrive." As if on cue, sirens wailed in the distance. Jackson's face paled. He looked from Arthur to Ethan to me, realization dawning that he'd lost everything. "This isn't over," he spat, before pushing past Arthur and disappearing into the night. In the aftermath, as the police took our statements and Jackson was arrested for breaking and entering, Ethan, Arthur, and I sat in stunned silence. Finally, Ethan spoke. "I'm sorry, Mom, for doubting you, for pushing you away." I reached for his hand, my heart swelling with love. "Oh, sweetheart, you have nothing to be sorry for. I'm the one who should apologize. I should have told you the truth sooner." "Maybe," he said, squeezing my hand, "but I understand why you didn't. You were protecting me, just like you always have." Arthur cleared his throat. "If I may, Ethan, I've known your family, all of your family, for a long time, and I can say without a doubt that you are loved. By Marianne and Tom, who chose you and cherished every moment with you, and by Nora, who has been there for you in ways that go beyond biology." Tears welled in my eyes as I looked at Arthur gratefully. In that moment, I saw him not just as Marianne's old friend or Ethan's mentor, but as a man of compassion and strength. Ethan nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. "I know, it's a lot to process, but I'm glad I know the truth now. And I'm glad you're my mom, Nora. Both of you, you and Marianne." As the night wore on, we talked, really talked, about everything. The past, the present, our fears and hopes for the future. And as the first light of dawn crept through the windows, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. Ethan yawned, stretching. "I should get some sleep. Big day tomorrow, starting the new job and all." As he headed to his room, he paused, looking back at Arthur and me. "You know, you two make a pretty good team." With that, he was gone, leaving Arthur and me alone. We looked at each other, a spark of something new and exciting passing between us. "He's right," Arthur said softly. "We do make a good team." I smiled, feeling the weight of the past lifting from my shoulders. "Yes, we do." As Arthur took my hand, I realized that this wasn't just an ending, it was a new beginning. For Ethan, stepping into his future with the truth as his foundation. For me, finding love and companionship when I least expected it. And for all of us, as a family, bound not by blood or obligation, but by choice and love. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it would lead. Together, we would face whatever came our way, stronger and more resilient than ever before.
The brass key felt cold in my palm as I stood at the front door of my childhood home, the same door I'd walked through thousands of times before. Something felt off. The familiar welcome mat was gone, replaced by a generic gray one I didn't recognize. My name is Stella, and this was the moment my world started to crumble. I inserted the key, but it wouldn't turn. Frowning, I tried again, jiggling it slightly. Nothing. That's when I noticed the new deadbolt above the original lock. "Can I help you?" A woman's voice startled me. I turned to see a stranger standing on my front porch, keys in hand, looking at me suspiciously. "I'm sorry, there must be some mistake," I said, my voice shaking. "This is my parents' house." The woman's expression softened slightly. "Oh, you must be confused. We bought this house last month. The Wilkinsons sold it to us." The world tilted sideways. That's impossible. I'm their daughter, they would have told me." "I'm sorry," she said, clearly uncomfortable. "But we have all the paperwork. Maybe you should talk to your parents." I stumbled backward, nearly falling down the porch steps. My phone was in my hand before I reached my car, fingers trembling as I dialed my mother's number. "Stella, honey," Mom's voice was too bright, too cheerful. "What a surprise. Where are you?" I demanded. A pause. "We're at home, dear." "No, you're not. Because I'm standing in front of our house, and some woman is telling me you sold it." My voice cracked. "Please tell me this is a mistake." Another pause, longer this time. I heard murmuring in the background. Dad's voice. "Sweetheart, we were going to tell you," Mom said finally. "We've moved to that lovely condo complex on Maple Street. Your father's medical expenses." "Medical expenses?" I interrupted. "What medical expenses? Dad was fine last week." "Well, there have been some complications. Look, why don't you come over? We can explain everything." 20 minutes later, I pulled into the visitor parking at an upscale condo complex. My parents were waiting in the lobby, both looking guilty but somehow defensive. "How could you?" I demanded, not caring that my voice echoed through the marble-floored space. "That was our home. I grew up there, all my memories." "Now, Stella," Dad stepped forward, using his lawyer voice. "Sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions. Don't patronize me. I'm 29 years old, not 9. You sold our house without even telling me." "Lower your voice," Mom hissed, glancing around nervously. "Come upstairs, and we can discuss this like civilized people." Their condo was immaculate, with new furniture I'd never seen before. The sight of it made me sick. "Your father's heart condition," Mom began. "What heart condition?" I cut her off. "Stop lying to me." Dad's face reddened. "Young lady, you do not get to come in here and make demands. What we do with our property is our business." "Our business," I repeated numbly. "That house was my inheritance. You promised." "Plans change," he said dismissively. "Now would you like some coffee?" I turned and walked out, ignoring their calls. In the parking lot, I realized I needed to use the bathroom. The lobby had one, so I ducked in quickly. That's when I saw it, poking out of the garbage can, a crumpled receipt. I wouldn't have noticed except for the string of zeros. Something made me pull it out. It was from a luxury car dealership. 2 cars, purchased last month, right after they sold the house. The total made my head spin. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Please come back up. We can explain everything." I took a photo of the receipt and walked out into the sunshine, my whole body numb. There had never been any medical expenses, no heart condition, just 2 selfish people who'd traded away their daughter's inheritance for a pair of shiny new cars. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of them in my rearview mirror, standing on their fancy new balcony. Dad was already on his phone, probably calling to damage control the situation. Mom was wringing her hands, her favorite worried gesture when things didn't go according to plan. I'd always known they could be selfish, but this was beyond betrayal. This was war. And as I merged onto the highway, heading back to my apartment, one thought kept circling in my mind. They had no idea what they'd just started. "You're not actually going to live in this shoebox, are you?" Violet stood in the middle of my new studio apartment, hands on her hips, surveying the cramped space with obvious disapproval. "It's all I can afford right now," I said, unpacking another box of kitchen supplies. Besides, it's just temporary. Temporary. She perched on the edge of my fold-out couch. What are you planning? I slammed a pot down harder than necessary. I don't know yet, but I'm not letting them get away with this. Stella, Violet's voice softened. I get that you're angry, but you need to think about yourself right now, not revenge. Why not both? I managed a weak smile. Actually, I already have an idea. Remember that overtime project Albert mentioned last week? The one that would basically eliminate your social life for the next 6 months. I nodded. I'm taking it. And I'm asking for that promotion I've been putting off. The senior analyst position. Violet's eyes widened. I thought you said you weren't ready. I wasn't, but things change. I started folding moving boxes. I need to build up my savings, fast. And what exactly are you saving for? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Mom's face appeared on the screen. Her 5th call today. I declined it. They're still trying to reach you, Violet asked. Them, their lawyer, even my aunt. I showed her the missed calls. Apparently, I'm being unreasonable by not accepting their explanation. Which is what exactly? Oh, it changes every time. First it was Dad's non-existent heart condition. Then it was investment opportunities. Now they're claiming they needed to downsize for retirement. I laughed bitterly. Retirement in matching Mercedes, apparently. Violet stood up suddenly. Get your coat. What? Why? Because you're spiraling. And I'm not watching my best friend self-destruct. We're going for a drive. An hour later, we were sitting on a quiet beach, watching the waves crash against the shore. The salt air cleared my head, making everything seem a little less overwhelming. Remember when we came here after Brad dumped you? Violet asked. And you made me write his name in the sand, so the tide could wash it away. I smiled at the memory. Seemed silly at the time, but it helped. Exactly. She handed me a stick. So maybe it's time for some more sand therapy. I took the stick and walked to the wet sand near the water's edge. In large letters, I wrote, betrayal. Below it, I added lies and greed. Feel better? Violet asked as the first wave lapped at the letters. A little. I watched as another wave erased half of betrayal. I just keep thinking about all the memories in that house. My height marks on the kitchen door frame. The tree house Dad built when I was 8. The window seat where I used to read for hours. Those memories are still yours, Violet said gently. No one can take them away. But they took everything else. I blinked back tears. And for what? So they could show off to their country club friends? Then make them regret it. Violet's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Not with anger or revenge, but by succeeding despite them. I turned to look at her. What do you mean? Take that promotion, work the overtime, save your money, show them you don't need their inheritance or their approval. She squeezed my shoulder. And when you're ready, we'll figure out the next step together. Back in my tiny apartment that evening, I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet. Column 1, current savings. Column 2, monthly income. Column 3, potential overtime earnings. Column 4, estimated promotion salary increase. As I plugged in the numbers, a plan started forming. It would take time, sacrifice, and more work than I'd ever done in my life. But maybe, just maybe, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Dad's lawyer, Vic. Stella, he said when I answered, your parents are worried about you. Are they worried about me, or worried about how this looks to their friends? He sighed. They'd like to meet. To explain their position. Their position is pretty clear from the matching luxury cars in their driveway. Sometimes parents make mistakes. Goodbye, Vic. I hung up and added another column to my spreadsheet. Target amount needed, the current market value of my childhood home. It was crazy, impossible even. But as I stared at the numbers, something inside me shifted from despair to determination. They thought they could just write me off, throw away our family history for a couple of status symbols. I was about to prove them very, very wrong. 3 months of 60-hour work weeks had left me exhausted but focused. I barely noticed the country club's opulent decor as I delivered the quarterly reports to Albert's board meeting. This was just another stepping stone. Then I heard her voice. "Oh, you simply must see our new cars." My mother's distinctive laugh carried through the partially open door of the ladies' lounge. "The interior is all hand-stitched leather." I froze, files clutched to my chest. "And Daniel's is the sport edition," she continued proudly. "Cost a fortune, but we deserved something nice after all these years of maintaining that old house." My knuckles went white against the manila folders. "But what about your daughter?" another voice asked. "I heard she was quite upset about the sale." "Stella's always been dramatic," Mom dismissed. "She'll get over it. Besides, what we do with our money is our business." I backed away from the door, bumping into someone. "Whoa, careful there." Skylar from accounting steadied me. His smile faded when he saw my face. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm fine," I managed. "Just need some air." Outside, I gulped in deep breaths of the autumn morning. My phone buzzed. A text from Albert. "Board loved your presentation. Promotion's yours if you want it." I texted back immediately. "I want it." "Everything okay?" Skylar had followed me out. "You kind of ran out of there." "Just family drama." I tried to smile. "Nothing important." "Ah, the famous family drama." He leaned against the wall beside me. "The whole office has been wondering why you've been working like a woman possessed. Has it been that obvious? Let's see. First one in, last one out. Volunteering for every overtime project." He counted off on his fingers. "Yeah, a little obvious." I laughed despite myself. "I have my reasons." "Want to talk about it over coffee? I know a place that makes incredible lattes." Before I could answer, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Stella Wilkinson?" a formal voice asked. "Yes, who's this?" "This is Marcus Reynolds from the Federal Banking Commission. We're conducting an investigation into certain financial transactions, and we'd like to ask you some questions about your parents, Daniel and Louisa Wilkinson." My heart stopped. "What kind of investigation?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss details over the phone. Could you come to our office tomorrow morning?" I wrote down the address with trembling hands. "What was that about?" Skylar asked after I hung up. I'm not sure." I looked at him. "Rain, check on that coffee. I need to make some calls." Back at my desk, I Googled Marcus Reynolds. He was legitimate, a senior investigator with an impressive record of fraud cases. But why was he investigating my parents? My phone buzzed again. A text from Dad. "Call immediately. Important." Then one from Mom. "Please, sweetheart, we need to talk." Even Vic the lawyer tried. "Stella, your parents need your help. Please respond." I ignored them all and called Violet instead. "The banking commission," she whispered, trying not to be overheard at her own office. "That sounds serious." "I know, but why contact me? I haven't spoken to them in months." "Maybe that's exactly why. You're an outside observer." My other line beeped. Dad again. "They're blowing up my phone," I said. "Something's got them scared." "Good," Violet said firmly. "Let them sweat." After work, I stopped by the local coffee shop to clear my head. The barista had just handed me my drink when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Stella." It was Vic, my parents' lawyer, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. "Please, just give me 5 minutes. I have nothing to say to you or them. This is serious." He lowered his voice. "There's an investigation. Your parents, they may have made some mistakes. Like selling my childhood home without telling me? Like possibly misrepresenting some financial documents." He glanced around nervously. "Look, I shouldn't be telling you this, but they're in trouble. Real trouble. And that's my problem because they're your parents." He ran a hand through his thinning hair. "Whatever they did, they're still family." I looked at him for a long moment. They stopped being family the day they decided their social status was more important than their daughter. "Stella." "Goodbye, Vic." As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed one final time. A text from an unknown number. "Ms. Wilkinson, this is Investigator Reynolds again. One more thing. Please don't discuss our conversation with your parents. It's crucial to our investigation that they remain unaware of our contact. I smiled for the first time that day. Karma, it seemed, had finally come calling. The repo men came on a Tuesday morning. I only knew because Skylar's cousin worked at the Mercedes dealership and texted him about it. 2 shiny cars towed away from my parents' fancy condo complex while their country club friends watched from their balconies. They apparently missed 3 payments, Skylar told me over lunch. The dealership manager said your dad threw a fit, threatened to sue everyone. I stirred my soup, trying to suppress the satisfaction bubbling up inside me. Karma's a funny thing. There's more. He leaned forward. The bank's freezing their accounts. Something about suspicious transactions. Before I could respond, my phone lit up with Investigator Reynolds's number. Ms. Wilkinson, he said when I answered. Thank you for coming in yesterday. We've made significant progress in our investigation. What exactly did they do? I asked, stepping away from the table. Your parents took out several loans using fraudulent documentation. The house sale appears to have been part of a larger pattern of financial misrepresentation. My legs felt weak. Are they going to be arrested? That depends on their cooperation. We'll be executing a search warrant this afternoon. I hung up and returned to the table, my soup forgotten. Everything okay? Skylar asked. I think my parents are about to lose everything. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. And how do you feel about that? I don't know. I pulled my hand back. Part of me wants to enjoy watching them suffer, but they're still your parents. The rest of the workday passed in a blur. At 5, Violet appeared at my desk. Come on, she said. You shouldn't be alone right now. We drove to her apartment, where she poured 2 glasses of wine and turned on the news. There, on the local channel, was my father being led out of his condo in handcuffs. Daniel Wilkinson, prominent local attorney, the reporter announced, was taken into custody today following allegations of financial fraud. I clicked off the TV. Stella, Violet watched me carefully. Talk to me. I should be happy, I said. They betrayed me, lied to me, sold my home for luxury cars they couldn't even afford. This is exactly what they deserve. But seeing Dad in handcuffs, I took a shaky breath. It feels wrong. My phone buzzed. Mom's number. Don't answer it, Violet warned. I answered anyway. Stella, please, Mom was crying. They've taken everything. Our accounts, our cars, your father. We need you. Like I needed you when you sold my home. We made a mistake, she sobbed. We got carried away, trying to keep up appearances. Please, sweetheart, help us. How exactly did you expect to keep up appearances with fraudulent loans? Silence. Then, how did you know about that? Goodbye, Mom. I hung up as someone knocked on Violet's door. It was Vic, looking haggard. You shouldn't be here, I said. I had to warn you. He glanced nervously over his shoulder. They're going to try to drag you into this. Your parents, they're claiming you knew about the fraud. What? I stood up so fast my wine glass toppled. That's insane. They're desperate. He loosened his tie. Look, I'm probably violating about 12 ethical rules here, but I couldn't let them blindside you. They're saying you helped prepare the fraudulent documents. But I didn't. I knew nothing about this. I believe you. He pulled out a business card. This is the contact information for Sandra Mills. She's an excellent criminal defense attorney. Call her first thing tomorrow. After he left, Violet helped me clean up the spilled wine. What are you thinking? She asked. I'm thinking Karma worked a little too well. I sank onto her couch. I wanted them to face consequences, but not like this, and I definitely didn't want to get dragged into their mess. Maybe this is your chance, she said slowly. My chance for what? To finally break free. To stop letting their drama control your life. She sat beside me. Think about it. You've been working yourself to death, obsessing over getting back at them. Maybe it's time to let go. My phone buzzed again. Dad this time, calling from jail presumably. Or, I said, declining the call. Maybe it's time to fight back harder than ever. I pulled up Sandra Mills' contact information and typed out a message. My parents are trying to frame me for their fraud. I need your help. The response came quickly. My office, 8 a.m. tomorrow. Bring any documentation you have of your non-involvement. I looked at Violet. Want to help me dig through some files tonight? She grabbed her keys. Let's stop by the liquor store first. Something tells me we're going to need more wine. Your parents really messed up this time, Sandra said, reviewing the documents spread across her desk. But their attempt to implicate you is falling apart. Your work records prove you were nowhere near their office when these documents were created. I slumped in relief. 2 weeks of legal meetings and sleepless nights had led to this moment. So I'm in the clear? Better than that. She shuffled some papers. The prosecutor wants you to testify against them. My stomach lurched. Testify? Your testimony could help ensure they face consequences for their actions. She leaned forward. But I understand if you're not comfortable. I'll do it. Back at work, I buried myself in spreadsheets until Skylar appeared at my desk with coffee. You look like you could use this, he said, setting down the cup. Rough morning. Just legal stuff. I took a grateful sip. Hey, you mentioned your cousin works in real estate, right? Yeah, why? I need some information about a property. I pulled up the listing for my childhood home on my phone. This one. His eyes widened. The one your parents sold. Stella, are you sure that's healthy? Probably not. I showed him the screen. But look at the price drop. 40% in 3 months? He whistled. That's steep. The new owners are getting divorced. They're motivated to sell. I tried to keep my voice casual. And with my promotion and savings. You're thinking of buying it. He pulled up a chair. Can you afford it? Maybe. With my overtime pay, and if I can get a decent mortgage rate. I showed him my spreadsheet. See? He studied the numbers. It's tight, but doable. Want me to have Sarah take a look? Would she? That would be amazing. On one condition. He grinned. You finally let me buy you that coffee I've been offering for months. For the first time in weeks, I felt myself smile. Deal. That evening, I met Violet at our usual spot. You're going to testify against your own parents. She stirred her drink. That's heavy. They tried to frame me, Vi. Besides, the prosecutor says they'll probably get a plea deal. Still, she hesitated. Are you sure this isn't about revenge anymore? It's about justice. I pulled out my phone. And maybe something else. Look at this. She scrolled through the listing photos. Your old house. But how? The price dropped significantly, with my savings and the promotion. Stella. She put down the phone. Think about this. Is buying that house really going to heal anything? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, Skylar's cousin. Just checked the property records. Interesting development. Can we meet? 20 minutes later, we were at a nearby coffee shop. Sarah, spreading documents on the table. So here's the thing, she said. The current owners are desperate to sell, but there's a problem with the original sale documentation. What kind of problem? Your parents' signatures. They're dated 3 weeks before they actually had clear title to sell. And there are some discrepancies in the financial statements they provided. My heart raced. What does that mean? It means, she smiled, that with the right legal approach, you might be able to challenge the original sale, especially given the current fraud investigation. I called Sandra immediately. It's possible, she said, after I explained. The fraudulent documentation could invalidate the sale, but it would be complicated. But possible. Yes, and given your parents' current legal troubles, they're in no position to fight it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I pulled up old photos of the house on my phone. Birthday parties in the backyard, Christmas mornings by the fireplace, quiet afternoons reading in the window seat. My phone lit up with a text from Skylar. Sarah told me about the house. Whatever you decide, I'm here to help. Another text came in, this one from Mom. Please don't testify against us. We're still your parents. I typed back. You stopped being my parents the moment you chose greed over family. Then I opened my spreadsheet again, adding a new column. Legal fees for challenging the sale. The numbers were daunting, but something else was growing stronger than the fear. Determination. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine, about turning their betrayal into my triumph. I texted Sandra, "Let's do it. Challenge the sale. All of it." Her response came quickly. "Come by tomorrow. We'll start the paperwork." I fell asleep that night, dreaming of home, not as it was, but as it could be. Mine again, but on my terms this time. No more betrayal, no more lies, just the sweet justice of taking back what they never should have sold. "The keys under the mat," Sarah said over the phone. "Take as much time as you need to look around." My hands trembled as I lifted the mat and found the familiar brass key. Different lock, same style of key. The universe had a strange sense of humor. The front door creaked open, and the smell hit me first. Musty, abandoned. The divorcing couple had moved out weeks ago, leaving the house empty and neglected. "Want me to come with you?" Skylar asked from behind me. He'd insisted on driving me here. "No, I need to do this alone." My footsteps echoed through the empty foyer. Paint peeled from the walls where family photos once hung. The hardwood floors, once gleaming, were scratched and dull. In the kitchen, water damage stained the ceiling. My height marks on the doorframe had been painted over, but I could still feel the grooves with my fingers. "You okay in there?" Skylar called from the porch. "Yeah," I answered, though my voice cracked. "Just remembering." The stairs protested under my weight as I climbed to the second floor. My old bedroom door hung slightly askew. Inside, the window seat where I'd spent countless hours reading was covered in dust. My phone buzzed, a text from Sandra. "Good news. Judge granted our motion to expedite the sale challenge. Bad news. Your parents' lawyer is fighting back." Another buzz. "Mom, we heard you're trying to take the house. Please stop this madness." I ignored both messages and walked to the window. The old oak tree still stood proud in the backyard, its branches reaching toward my window like an old friend. "The inspector's report came in," Skylar said, finally coming inside. "Want to hear it?" "How bad?" "Roof needs work, plumbing's iffy, but the structure's solid." He handed me a folder. "Sarah says with the market conditions and the legal complications, you could probably get it for 30% below the current asking price." I flipped through the inspection photos. That would put it just within my budget. "If you're sure about this." "I am." I turned to face him. "This house, it's more than just property. It's everything they took from me. And everything you're taking back," he added softly. My phone buzzed again. "Sandra, meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Opposing counsel wants to discuss settlement." "They're trying to settle," I told Skylar. "Already." "Is that good or bad?" "It means they're scared." I walked to my parents' old bedroom, now stripped bare. They know I have a case. The master bathroom light flickered when I flipped the switch. A cockroach scurried across the floor. "This place needs work," Skylar said, following me. "A lot of work." "I know." I smiled. "Isn't it perfect?" He laughed. "You're crazy, you know that. Crazy enough to make this happen." Back downstairs, I stood in the living room, remembering Christmas mornings, family game nights, all the moments before greed poisoned everything. My phone rang. Dad's lawyer. "What do you want, Vic?" "Your parents are willing to help you buy another house," he said. "A newer one, better neighborhood." "Not interested." "Stella, please." "They're facing serious charges. This legal battle over the house, it's not helping their case." "That sounds like their problem." "They're looking at jail time." His voice dropped. "Real jail time. If you drop this house business, maybe testify on their behalf." I hung up. "Everything okay?" Skylar asked. "They're trying to bribe me." I laughed bitterly. "Again. With what?" "A different house. Their freedom. Everything except what I actually want." "Which is?" "Justice." I walked to the front door, running my hand along the wall. "And this house, my house." Outside, the setting sun cast long shadows across the overgrown lawn. The for sale sign swayed in the breeze, its reduced price banner faded and torn. Sarah can draw up an offer tonight, Skylar said. If you're ready. I took one last look at the house, not as it was now, neglected and broken, but as it could be, as I could make it. Tell her to do it, I said. But with one condition. What's that? The offer stays anonymous. I don't want my parents knowing it's me until it's too late for them to stop it. He grinned. Remind me never to get on your bad side. As we drove away, I watched the house shrink in the side mirror. Soon, I thought. Soon you'll be mine again. My phone buzzed one final time. Sandra. Settlement meeting tomorrow. How do you want to play this? I typed back, no settlement. We go for everything. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't just about winning. It's about coming home. The deed's been recorded, Sandra announced, sliding the document across her desk. Congratulations, Stella. The house is officially yours. I traced my fingers over my name on the paper, still not quite believing it. When are you telling your parents? She asked. Today. I checked my watch. Their sentencing hearing is in 2 hours. Want backup? Skylar asked from his spot by the window. I shook my head. This is something I need to do alone. The courthouse hallway was crowded with reporters when I arrived. Mom and Dad sat on a bench outside the courtroom, looking smaller somehow in their formal clothes. No designer labels now, just off-the-rack suits that hung loose on their frames. Stella, Mom jumped up. You came. Does this mean you'll testify for us? No. I held up the deed. I came to show you this. Dad adjusted his glasses, squinting at the paper. His face went pale. He stammered. You bought the house? Anonymous buyer, I said. Ring any bells? Mom collapsed back onto the bench. But how? I worked for it. Every extra shift, every overtime hour, every bonus. I met their eyes. I earned it instead of stealing it. We didn't steal, Dad began. Save it for the judge. I cut him off. The fraud charges tell a different story. Is this what you wanted? Mom's voice cracked. To see us humiliated. To take everything from us. Everything? I laughed. Like you took everything from me? The house? My inheritance? My trust? We made mistakes, Dad said quietly. We got caught up in appearances, in what other people thought. And now, I gestured at the reporters. How's that working out for you? A bailiff appeared at the courtroom door. They're ready for you? Mom grabbed my arm. Please, sweetheart, say something to the judge. Tell them we're good parents. I pulled away. Good parents don't frame their children for fraud. We were desperate. Dad's composure finally cracked. The loans were coming due. The cars were being repossessed. And whose fault was that? I held up the deed again. I bought this house with honest money. Every penny documented. Every transaction legitimate. Meanwhile, you're facing jail time for fraud. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Mom's tears dried up, replaced by anger. Our own daughter, gloating over our downfall. No, Mom, I'm not enjoying this. I tucked the deed into my bag. I'm just finally seeing you both clearly. The bailiff called again. Last call. When you get out, I said, don't come to the house. Don't call. Don't send Vic or any other lawyers. It's over. Over? Dad's voice shook. We're your parents. Parents don't destroy their children's lives to keep up with the Joneses. I stepped back. Good luck with the sentencing. I turned to leave, but Mom's voice stopped me. What happened to you? She asked. You used to be such a sweet girl. I looked back one last time. I grew up. I learned that sometimes the people who should love you the most are the ones who hurt you worst. But mostly, I learned how to fight back. The courtroom doors opened, and they were led inside. Through the closing door, I heard the judge begin. In the matter of financial fraud. Outside, Violet was waiting in her car. How'd it go? About as well as you'd expect. I buckled my seatbelt. They're still trying to manipulate me. And I'm done letting them. I pulled out the deed. Take me home? We drove to my house, where Skylar was waiting with paint samples and takeout. The contractor can start next week, he said, spreading out renovation plans on the kitchen counter. Should take about 2 months to get everything up to code. My phone buzzed, a news alert. Local attorney and wife sentenced in fraud case. Want to know? Violet asked. I shook my head. It doesn't matter anymore. This isn't about them now. Then what is it about? Skylar handed me a paint chip in sage green. I looked around the kitchen, imagining new cabinets, fresh paint, clean windows, letting in the afternoon sun. It's about rebuilding, I said. Not just the house, but everything. To new beginnings. Violet raised her coffee cup. And karma, Skylar added with a grin. I held up the paint chip, matching it against the wall where my height marks used to be. Soon new marks would replace them, not of a child's growth, but of a home's rebirth. To both, I said, and to finally coming home. The last box of renovation debris hit the dumpster with a satisfying crash. I stood back, surveying my newly restored home in the warm spring sunshine. Fresh paint gleamed on the trim, new windows sparkled, and the lawn was finally starting to show green through the mud. Looking good, Skylar said, wrapping an arm around my waist. Almost as good as the woman who owns it. Smooth talker, I elbowed him playfully. Help me with the window seat cushions. Inside, the house smelled of fresh paint and new beginnings. We'd kept the original hardwood floors, but refinished them to a warm honey color. The kitchen sparkled with updated appliances, though I'd insisted on keeping the old door frame, where my height marks had been. Where do you want these? Violet called from the front door, carrying a stack of books. Window seat, I directed. My reading nook is almost ready. As we arranged the cushions and books, the doorbell rang. Through the new stained glass, I saw Vic's silhouette. Stella, he said when I opened the door. You've done amazing things with the place. What do you want, Vic? He shifted uncomfortably. Your mother asked me to give you this. He held out an envelope. She wrote it in prison. I'm not interested. Please. He pressed the envelope into my hand. Just read it. That's all she's asking. After he left, I sat in my window seat, turning the envelope over and over. You don't have to open it, Violet said softly. I know, but I was already breaking the seal. Mom's familiar handwriting filled the page. Dear Stella, the thing about prison is it gives you time to think. Too much time. I think about the house, about the cars, about all the stupid shallow things we thought were important. But mostly I think about you. I watch you sometimes, through my window during yard time. I can see the roof of our old house, your house now. I've watched you restore it, piece by piece, making it more beautiful than we ever did. You did it the right way, the honest way. You've become the woman I should have taught you to be, instead of the shallow, materialistic person I was. I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know I'm proud of you. Not despite what you did, but because of it. Love, Mom. I folded the letter carefully. You okay? Skylar squeezed my hand. Actually, yes. I tucked the letter into my book. For the first time, I think she finally sees me. Speaking of seeing things, Violet grinned. Wait until you see what we did upstairs. They led me to my bedroom, where they'd hung a gallery wall of photos. Not the old family portraits, but new memories. Me and Violet at the beach during our sand therapy session. Skylar and me covered in paint during renovations. The three of us celebrating my promotion. There's room for more. Skylar pointed to empty frames. Lots more. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Sarah, carrying champagne and takeout. Housewarming time, she announced. Also, you might want to see this. She handed me a newspaper. There, in the business section. Local law firm announces restructuring following senior partner's conviction. Dad's firm is selling the building, I said, scanning the article. They're downsizing to rebuild trust in the community. Karma's still working overtime, Violet commented. Speaking of work, Skylar pulled out his phone. Albert wants to know if you'll head the new finance division. I looked around my restored bedroom, at the mix of old and new, at the people who'd helped me rebuild more than just a house. Tell him yes, I said. It's time for new challenges. We gathered in the kitchen, where Sarah popped the champagne. The cork hit the new ceiling with a thunk, making us all laugh. To Stella, Violet raised her glass. Who taught us all that the best revenge is living well and renovating better, Skylar added. To Karma, Sarah chimed in. May it always have perfect timing. I looked at my friends, my real family, gathered in my kitchen. Outside, the setting sun painted the walls gold through the new windows. Somewhere across town, in a prison cell, my mother could probably see the same sunset reflecting off my roof. To home, I said finally. Not just the building, but the feeling. The knowing who you are and where you belong. As we clinked glasses, I felt the last pieces settle into place. The house wasn't just restored, it was transformed. Like me, not erasing the past, but building something better from its foundations. So, Skylar said, pulling me close, what's next? I smiled, looking around at my beautifully imperfect life. Whatever we want it to be.